Under the freezing cold weather of the eastern mountains, everything in sight is covered in a thick blanket of pure white snow. Our protagonist stands there, rubbing his hands together to shake off the bitter cold on the tip of his nose. In his head, he's thinking that if joining the army wasn't the only way to make some quick cash, there is no freaking way he'd come to this freezing wasteland to fight a dragon. Standing in an atmosphere thick with the stench of death, chaotic screams and clashing weapons echo in his ears. He carefully observes the situation before him. On one side is a monstrous army of beasts, both airborne and landbound, while on the other are humans equipped with nothing but basic armor and helmets. They are mercenaries who came here to hunt monsters, just to make some money. Anyone can see that the gap in power is just way too massive. If things keep going like this, he probably won't even get paid. Just as the soldiers' morale is crumbling, a voice suddenly rings out. Don't panic. Just because the enemy is powerful doesn't mean we're bound to lose. But if we retreat now, defeat is absolutely guaranteed. As soon as the red-haired girl finishes speaking, she summons a massive fireball that streaks toward the dragon, erupting into a violent explosion. Her name is Connie Charlotte, one of the 4 great archmages and the trump card of the Fram Empire, known to the world as the Flame Witch. Right now, she is leading the army to take down the ice dragon, Scott Walker. That strike of hers is the ultimate signal for the entire army to charge. Seeing Connie Charlotte, the soldiers feel a sudden surge of strength. Their fighting spirit instantly reignites as they grab their weapons and charge forward. Despite the devastating fire magic, as the white smoke clears, the ice dragon emerges once again, completely unscathed. The entire army freezes in shock, unable to believe their eyes. Even Connie Charlotte is completely stunned. That attack was one of the most advanced fire spells, known as Magma Burst. Yet, hitting the dragon's thick, armored hide didn't even leave a scratch. The dragon roars, opening its massive jaws to exhale a freezing blizzard, instantly turning the weather into a raging storm. The temperature plummets, freezing to the very bone. Most of the soldiers fail to escape in time and are instantly frozen solid into blocks of ice. With a simple swipe of its tail, the dragon easily shatters them into pieces. Facing overwhelming odds, Connie Charlotte, carrying the heavy burden of slaying the ice dragon, leaps down from the cliff. Holding the crimson flame sword, her resolve unbroken, she charges in alone to fight the dragon. She swings her sword down with incredible force, but the beast blocks it with its tail. The crimson flame sword spins out of control and slips right out of Connie Charlotte's grip. Refusing to back down, she quickly leaps back and chants a spell, unleashing a massive magic circle to summon fire. The snowy landscape instantly glows a fiery red. Countless great flame swords rain down, aiming straight for the dragon. But the ice dragon Scott Walker is the ultimate beast of this region, and it won't go down that easily. Opening its jaws wide, it unleashes a powerful blast carrying its full strength. Fire and ice clash, but the difference in raw power between the two was far too vast from the very beginning. Connie Charlotte's great flame swords look like mere sparks in comparison, instantly snuffed out by the ice dragon's devastating blast. Connie Charlotte can only watch as the terrifying destructive force surges toward her. She lets out a scream, and her voice is instantly swallowed by the cold, white snow. After blasting the girl away, the dragon's icy beam continues forward, piercing through several mountains. With such terrifying, destructive power, even one of the 4 great archmages couldn't stand a chance. So for starving soldiers who only joined for the money, there is absolutely no way. Their chances of winning have plummeted straight to 0. Terrified, the surviving soldiers drop their weapons and run for their lives. They treat the battlefield like a playground. They came as a crowd, but now only one remains. Connie Charlotte looks around helplessly at the devastation, with abandoned weapons scattered everywhere. Now, she is the only one left to face the monsters, yet her fighting spirit refuses to die. She pushes herself up, gritting her teeth, refusing to accept this cruel reality. Right then, a voice echoes in her ear, "Why aren't you running? This is clearly a battle you can't win." Connie Charlotte turns her head, completely shocked that someone actually stayed behind. Standing before her is a young man, who introduces himself as someone about to go on a date with a foolishly calculative girl and a pile of gold. His words are both ridiculous and sarcastic. Yet, for some reason, his tone suddenly shifts, demanding that she look back and answer his question. Connie Charlotte's face hardens, and she firmly states that running away is simply not in her vocabulary, not now, and certainly not ever. Distracted by their conversation, they don't even notice that the beast is already lunging toward them. Connie Charlotte panics, realizing she let herself get distracted by the guy. The dragon opens its mouth, and with just a single breath, this battle will be over for good. Completely defeated, she closed her eyes and prepared for the worst. She figured she would only be visiting home as a ghost once or twice a year, when suddenly, everything went dead silent. Opening her eyes to see what was going on, she was shocked to see the dragon's snout clamped shut. All that freezing frost energy was forced right back down its throat. With just one hand, that young man tossed the strongest magical beast around like a helpless cricket. The dragon tumbled across the ground, its eyes bloodshot with pure rage. It stomped to its feet, instantly wrapping its entire body in a thick, solid layer of ice. Even facing such a terrifying beast, he did not show a single shred of fear. Reaching his left hand forward, he summoned a massive magic circle, filled with incredibly complex runes. He casually said, "Back in my village, when a little dragon misbehaves, we just burn it to a crisp." With that, a blast of high-level magic erupted, engulfing the ice dragon in a strange purple flame. It did not even have time to run, only able to roar in absolute agony. Before long, it was completely incinerated, and its remains condensed into a tiny crystal that fell right into his hand. The young man turned around with a grin and said, "Hey, I just saved your life. Want to reconsider paying for our date, Charlotte?" She stared in utter disbelief. That was hands down the coolest thing she had ever seen. He actually took down an entire ice dragon with just one hand. With that kind of insane power, she had absolutely no idea who this guy really was. Charlotte managed to ask who he was, but before he could answer, her exhausted body finally gave out. The world spun, everything went pitch black, and Charlotte collapsed. He rushed over to catch her, casually muttering to himself that he was just a puppet trying to make some quick cash. But his true identity did not really matter right now. Gasping as she snapped awake, Charlotte reached her hand out and screamed, "The ice dragon!" But the moment the words left her mouth, she realized something was off. This place was strangely warm, a far cry from the freezing snowfield. She was wearing clean clothes, and there was a soft bed beneath her. She definitely was not on the eastern battlefield anymore. "Ah, you are finally awake. How are you feeling? You have been asleep for days." A raspy, elderly voice cut through her thoughts. Looking up, Charlotte recognized him as Master Aesman, the chief mage of the Fram Empire and the headmaster of the Royal Academy. Closing his book, he told her not to worry. The ice dragon had already been defeated. The threat to the Empire was gone, but there was still one question weighing on his mind. How exactly did the ice dragon die? Charlotte quickly shook her head, claiming she could not remember a thing. The truth about a random guy appearing out of nowhere and casually defeating a dragon with one hand sounded way too ridiculous to be believed. Since everything was so blurry, she figured it was better to keep it a secret. Master Aesman sighed and stopped pressing, but then he pulled out a small glass vial containing a flickering ember of that same purple flame. He explained that she was already unconscious when they found her, but the battlefield still left behind some clues. Hellfire is a flame that no human could ever control. Its presence here means an apostle must be around. Those people have been in hiding for so long. Yet the sudden appearance of hellfire suggests there is something much bigger going on behind the scenes. Seeing that she had just woken up, he placed his book on the table and told her to focus on resting, saying they could worry about this later. He also added that the Empire would announce she was the one who defeated the dragon to prevent any public panic. So all she had to do was sit back and accept the glory. With that, he walked out, leaving a stunned Charlotte trying to process the overwhelming amount of shocking news. The news of Charlotte single-handedly taking down the legendary ice dragon spread like wildfire, throwing the entire kingdom into celebration. But amidst the cheering crowd at a local bar, he realized that if his true identity ever got out, not only would he be treated like a freak, but he would also lose any chance of attracting cute girls. He came to the human world for one reason, only to find a wife. But at this rate, he figured it was time to pack up and move to a new town before things got out of hand. Holding back tears, he packed his bags and tried to slip away. But before he could make his escape, a squad of heavily armored soldiers burst through the door. The officer leading them scanned the room and barked, "Which one of you is named you?" Oh boy. This was starting to look like a full-blown manhunt. Every single person in the bar instantly pointed right at him. Caught red-handed, his heart jumped into his throat, thinking his secret identity as an apostle had finally been blown. But to his surprise, they announced that he had been selected to attend the prestigious Royal Academy. The crowd started whispering in annoyance. They all figured he was totally useless, so how on earth did he get such special treatment? Naturally, the officer overheard their grumbling. With a stern face, he asked if any of them had ever risked their lives to fight the ice dragon. Who here has returned in one piece? Is that kind of strength and sacrifice something you really want to gossip about? His words felt like a series of harsh slaps to the face. The crowd, which had been rowdy just moments ago, fell dead silent, with no one daring to utter a single word. Suddenly, Yu raised his hand high and asked a question that left the officer completely speechless. "Excuse me, are there a lot of beautiful girls studying at this academy?" The officer, who had just been singing his praises, had no idea how to react. After a long, awkward pause, he managed to squeeze out a single word: plenty. The Royal Academy was the pride of the Fram Empire, the top-tier school where the nation's elite gathered. And yes, beautiful women were absolutely everywhere. They were either cute, petite girls or stunning, goddess-like beauties. Standing among them, Yu looked like a stray pheasant lost in a flock of peacocks, looking completely out of place. The officer, his smile twitching at Yu's shamelessly girl-crazy expression, turned to Headmaster Aceman and asked, "If I may ask, Lord Aceman, why did you give a seemingly weak mercenary like him such a prestigious recommendation?" The headmaster just smiled, his voice carrying a deeper, mysterious tone. "Just giving a young man a chance. Who knows? We might get some very unexpected results." Right then, the school's PA system crackled to life, first congratulating the newcomers who had just earned their spot at the Royal Academy. Next, it announced the start of the entrance exam, wishing them luck in passing and surviving. The moment the announcement ended, 4 summoning circles lit up on the floor, summoning creatures known as firewolves. True to their name, they were wolves covered in raging flames, usually summoned by high-ranking mages, and their danger level was absolutely off the charts. It seemed like the first time these students had ever faced such beasts. Panic swept through the crowd, and many could barely even stand. Quite a few tried to reassure themselves, thinking that since this was a school exam, it would be controlled and wouldn't actually put their lives in danger. Despite their terror, some students began casting magic to fight back. Vines shot out of a magic circle to bind the beasts, but they simply weren't fast enough. They couldn't catch a single one. Ice bullets were hurled next, but their magic was far too weak. Even though it was ice magic, the moment it hit the scorching bodies of the firewolves, it evaporated into thin air, leaving nothing but a cloud of white steam. One of the wolves pounced, opening its fanged maw wide and taking a brutal bite. A massive chunk of flesh was torn from the unfortunate kid's body, and he bit the dust right then and there. Talk about a disaster. Who wants to go to school when there's blood everywhere on the very first day? Seeing the 4 ravenous firewolves aggressively charging, the students scrambled, running for their lives. However, among the panicked rookies, there were still some genuinely powerful players. A long-haired boy calmly stepped forward to confront the beasts. As a wind mage, he kicked things off by conjuring a massive gust of wind, blowing the wolves back into a corner. Inspired, the others began coordinating their attacks. The archers took the left flank, the mages attacked from the right, and the swordsmen charged straight in for close-quarters combat. Working together, they finished them off by trapping the beasts in a massive block of earth, packing all 4 of them tightly into one spot. Seeing the monsters pinned and motionless, the students cheered, believing they had won the battle. But they spoke too soon. The flames flared up again, and in the blink of an eye, the 4 firewolves merged together, morphing into a monstrous, 3-headed beast. The long-haired boy muttered, "As expected of the Royal Academy, throwing a monster this dangerous at a bunch of freshmen." The firewolf suddenly went on the offensive, relentlessly spitting devastating fireballs in all directions. The Academy's main hall was engulfed in a crimson haze of fire and smoke, filled with deafening screams and savage barks. Yu just stood there, calmly observing. He could feel a fireball heading straight for him, but still ignored it, and didn't even glance at it. He had plenty of ability to block this attack, but a pair of massive assets suddenly blocked his view. The next thing he knew, his world was spinning, before his eyes finally focused on the gorgeous, panicked face of a girl he didn't know. Chaos still reigned all around them, with smoke and fire turning the hall into a total war zone. After checking to see if he was okay, the beautiful girl quickly stood up and warned him to be careful, telling him not to space out like that if he wanted to keep his life. She urged him to get to safety, promising she would handle the rest. Yu clutched his burning cheeks, screaming on the inside, "Oh no, I'm in trouble." With a face like that, a body like that, and a heart, well, assets, that gorgeous, she is absolutely a saint. There's no way I'm wrong. The platinum-haired girl stepped forward, condensing the moisture in the air directly into the palm of her hand. In an instant, sharp blades of ice materialized at her command, flying straight toward the 3-headed fire monster. The firewolf was absolutely furious after that last hit. It growled, its eyes locked onto him with a clear intent to kill. Meanwhile, vines stealthily crept up from its side. After all, the girl wasn't fighting this battle alone. Her classmates were right there, ready to back her up. She shouted, "Everyone, please buy me some time. I can freeze it in place." They all nodded in agreement and charged forward together. But they just didn't have enough strength to hold the line for long. The beast easily shattered their perimeter, sending them flying into the corners one by one. The silver-haired girl lured the firewolf toward her, having already set up a binding circle under her feet beforehand. The moment the three-headed firewolf stepped into position, a second magic circle instantly formed right above its head while she leaped out of the way. She poured all her mana into the dual magic circles to bind the beast. Ice crystallized from below, freezing the firewolf's legs and locking it in place. On her command, several heavy chains shot down from above, wrapping tightly around its neck to completely cut off any chance of escape. Seeing the three-headed beast completely chained up, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. They thought the fight was over, but as always, some students carry the team, while others are just dead weight. They worked so hard to restrain it, only for some absolute idiot to ruin everything. Out of nowhere, a massive fireball came flying in. It hit dead on, shattering the chains and freeing the three-headed firewolf from the binding circle. The long-haired guy yelled in pure frustration, "Damn it! Who the hell used fire magic?" He quickly cast a spell, erecting a wind wall to block the flying ice shards. Embers rained down on the students. Honestly, that attack might have looked cool at first glance, but you knew all too well that if the caster isn't strong enough, it'll just backfire and turn the whole situation into a complete disaster. Out for blood, the firewolf lunged straight at the silver-haired girl to get payback. Absolutely terrified, she could only watch blankly as the beast charged right at her. With her mana completely drained, there was absolutely no way she could dodge this in time. Talk about perfect timing. Seizing the chance to shine like a main character, you dashed forward and swept her right into his arms. And to shut this wild mud up for good, all it took was one solid kick. The three-headed beast was sent flying, crashing violently into the massive stone wall behind them. It took one last breath and went completely still, ready to meet its maker. No matter how tough the situation, it was always an easy fix for him. Yu looked down at the girl in his arms, feeling a bit puzzled. He asked with concern, "Hey, did you get hurt when I kicked that wild mutt earlier?" Blushing furiously with tears welling up in her eyes, she quickly shook her head and told him no. She begged him to let go, warning him that he'd get a beating if he kept this up. Well, she certainly felt as soft and squishy as a piece of jelly. Even if it was an accident, this move immediately triggered a wave of jealousy from the other guys. How dare he lay a finger on their goddess? They looked ready to tear him apart right then and there. But just as the tension reached an awkward peak, a gentle, feminine voice cut through the air. "All right, that's enough for the exam." A male student turned toward the voice and realized it was Vice Principal Claire who had just arrived. "Oh, this is perfect. With the Vice Principal here, things are finally getting serious." The long-haired guy stepped forward and pointed directly at a student who was collapsed on the ground. He demanded, "How could an academy exam be this dangerously reckless?" Vice Principal Claire simply smiled and casually waved her hand. Instantly, the injured students lying on the ground turned back into cards and flew right to her. Only then did they realize that these were actually just illusionary puppets all along. The rumors about Vice Principal Claire being a master puppeteer were definitely true. The woman was the real deal. Getting back to business, Vice Principal Claire congratulated everyone who passed, welcoming them to the elite class of the Royal Academy. Their instructor and supervisor would be none other than one of the Academy's top 4 archmages, Caney Charlotte. After introducing everyone, the Vice Principal bid them farewell and headed back to finish her administrative duties. Except for Yu, who was busy hiding from someone he knew, the rest of the students immediately swarmed around Connie Charlotte. They eagerly asked if she had anything planned for them. She replied that today was just an orientation, and their real practical combat training would start tomorrow at 7 in the morning. With that, they were dismissed to get their things in order. But having held it in all this time, the long-haired guy finally stepped forward to speak his mind. He demanded to know why Connie Charlotte would let a useless, perverted nobody like you into the elite class. He argued that aside from taking advantage of their goddess, you had done absolutely nothing. Hearing this, the silver-haired girl quickly chimed in to defend you, saying he did help. It was just that a few accidents happened along the way. Connie Charlotte said nothing, silently walking straight toward you. On the outside, he tried his best to act cool, but on the inside, he was absolutely crying rivers. He had tried his best to block out the memory of their first meeting, but now he couldn't help but sweat nervously as she asked, "Have we met somewhere before?" "No way. I just have a really common face, Miss Canny. You must have me confused with someone else." With one convinced they'd met, and the other smoothly lying through his teeth, the conversation quickly hit a dead end. Too lazy to push it, Canny Charlotte simply turned and walked away. She announced to everyone that the list had been approved, and her friend even stepped up to explain things on his behalf. In this classroom, she made the rules, and if anyone had a problem with that, they could request a transfer to another class. Finally, the room fell dead silent. A few guys clearly couldn't stand him, but since the academy had already made its decision, there was no point in arguing, so they just sucked it up and let it go. Later that night, a small meeting was held in the headmaster's office. Charlotte Kerr handed over the list of students who passed the entrance exam, then hesitantly asked the man across from her, "Sir, is one of those students connected to the apostles?" Headmaster Aisman didn't answer right away, but instead asked them a question of his own. "Did anything unusual happen during the exam?" Hearing this, Vice Principal Claire immediately filled him in on what happened. Among the students, only one person was able to send the firewolf flying, but all we saw was him standing in front of it, and the next second, the wolf was blasted away. Aisman nodded slowly in understanding. He suspected this student possessed an innate gift for magic, the kind of raw talent very few mages are ever born with. Realizing it was getting incredibly late, the headmaster told the two to head back. He assured them not to worry about the apostles, as he would handle it. Meanwhile, Yu, who was practically ancient but still forced to wake up early for school, was yawning and cursing his luck when his goddess suddenly walked by. Just one look at the silver-haired beauty was enough to completely steal his soul. The sky was bright and blue, and with the air so fresh, it felt like the perfect day to make a move. He walked up to greet her, casually bringing up yesterday's accident and claiming his hands had just slipped because he was clumsy. Although the air grew a bit awkward, she seemed to have let it go. She gave him a gentle smile, introducing herself as Isa, and asked him for his name. Blushing with embarrassment, he told her his name was Yu, just a single syllable. It sounded a bit plain, but hey, at least the guy holding the name was a total catch. Luckily, they hit it off, and he quickly won over the girl walking beside him. The two happily chatted away as they headed toward the assembly hall, completely unaware of the intensely jealous eyes glaring at them from behind. Right on time for class, all the students had gathered, eagerly waiting for their first practical combat class. When Charlotte Kerr summoned a fire tiger through a magic circle, a nerdy kid with Coke bottle glasses immediately started reciting facts about it. Even though the fire tiger's fire attribute is only mid-tier, its physical strength is 10 times greater than that of normal beasts. Hearing this, a long-haired boy scoffed in disdain. They had already faced a high-tier firewolf, so bringing out a mid-tier tiger felt like ganging up on the weak. But teacher Charlotte Kerr's plan was obviously not that simple. To spice things up, she announced that anyone drawing the same number would be paired up, and they would have exactly 1 hour to defeat the fire tiger. Unrolling his slip to see a bright red number 7, Yu wanted to cry, wishing he could scratch the numbers off, because fate had cruelly kept him away from his beautiful goddess. Meanwhile, the long-haired boy got lucky and immediately put on a pompous, high and mighty act. He introduced himself as the eldest son of the Bolet family, Kyle Bolet, making sure everyone knew he was a pretty big deal. But Isa couldn't care less. Since time was ticking, she wanted to quickly talk strategy to deal with the beast. In stark contrast to her cautious approach, Kyle confidently boasted that his skills were far superior to the average crowd around them. He volunteered to take it down all on his own, telling his goddess she could just sit back and watch. Kyle was the first to step up. Facing the roaring, flame-covered beast, he kept his arrogant smirk. Thrusting his hand forward, he unleashed Windblade, shaping the air into a weapon so sharp it sliced right through the stone floor. The spell was surprisingly powerful. From Charlotte Kerr's observation, even though wind magic was a basic element, his execution was easily at a mid-tier level, which also gave the caster a massive boost in speed. While the fire tiger watched closely and waited for its moment, Kyle was desperate to show off in front of Isa. He condensed the wind into his palm, shaping it into a sphere before hurling it straight at the beast. The wind sphere clashed with the tiger's flames, triggering a massive explosion that sent sparks flying in every direction. The powerful gust of wind was so strong it even blew up the skirts of several girls standing nearby. As the smoke cleared, Kyle assumed the test was in the bag, but Isa suddenly shrieked and pointed behind him in pure panic. Kyle spun around, only to find himself staring straight into the wide-open, fanged maw of the tiger. He was pinned flat to the floor. With the blazing beast looming right over him, it looked like this amateur was about to get roasted alive. But suddenly, the flames flared up violently. With everything he had, Kyle threw a lightning-fast punch. He kicked the tiger's belly, knocking the beast off of him. Although he ended up looking a bit singed, in the end, he still managed to prove himself as a capable mage. Shoving his hands in his pockets, Kyle confidently asked Aisha if they had taken first place. To his surprise, the teacher announced that they had only placed second. The first place spot belonged to another team. Kyle refused to believe it, insisting there must have been a mistake. He was the strongest guy here, so there was no way anyone could have beaten him so easily. Canis Charlotte was already getting tired of this arrogant brat. She pointed toward a group of students celebrating nearby, clarifying that the other team had finished their task slightly ahead of them. Following her gaze, Kyle and Aisha realized the leading team was Yu's. He was sitting with his partner, and they were actually playing around with the fire tiger. Seeing it lie on its back, letting them belly rub it, it looked more like a giant lazy cat than a fierce tiger. It made absolutely no sense how something this absurd could actually happen. To understand what happened, let us go back 15 minutes. Our guy, Yu, looking utterly miserable with teary eyes, was holding a slip of paper, trying to find his designated partner. The person holding the lucky number 7 turned out to be a heavily built girl carrying a massive axe over her shoulder. She cheerfully introduced herself as Eugene, while Yu just stood there, completely dumbfounded and frozen in place. In Yu's eyes, she was decent looking, but she definitely could not compare to his sweet, gentle Aisha. Seeing her friendly greeting get ignored, an annoyed Eugene swung her axe down, forcing him to pay attention to what she was saying. Her initial intention was just to scare him a bit, but to her shock, he effortlessly stopped her strike with just 2 fingers. Annoyed and trying to save some face, Eugene turned away, claiming she would handle the tiger all by herself. And with that, the tiger hunting mission finally began. Eugene swung her axe rapidly, but the fire tiger managed to dodge it just in time. Baring its fangs, it let out a menacing roar to threaten its opponent. Eugene slammed her axe handle into the ground for leverage, then leapt into the air to deliver a swift kick right to its belly. The strike was powerful enough to send the tiger flying, but her leg got caught in its tail. Losing her balance, she was instantly dragged down to the ground. Eugene quickly sat up, her body aching all over from that careless mistake. The fire tiger lunged at her again. With no other choice, Eugene was forced to use her weapon to block its massive, snapping jaws. Even though the fire tiger was only a mid-tier magic beast, its offensive power was nothing to scoff at. Eugene's entire body trembled violently as she struggled to hold it back. Right then, Yu casually chimed in from the side. "How can you be so mean to a lady, little kitty? Seriously, can you believe this?" While others had to fight tooth and nail just to stand a chance against these beasts, Yu managed to tame the fire tiger with just a single question. This innate talent of his left Canis Charlotte highly impressed. She made it clear to all the students that the ultimate way to defeat a magic beast is not just brute force, but taming it. Seeing this for the first time, Aisha's face lit up with pure excitement. Meanwhile, Kyle smirked with disdain, convinced it was nothing more than pure luck. They just happened to run into a friendly tiger, that was all. There was no way he was going to accept them taking first place like this. Kyle quickly strode over to Yu, burning with jealousy because Yu had lucked out with a friendly fire tiger to easily pass the test. A few other guys immediately joined in, nodding in agreement and complaining that their own tigers were far too aggressive. They believed he only won first place by sheer luck and had actually done nothing at all. Yu did not bother reacting to their insults, calmly stating that he had simply used a special skill. He claimed it was an innate magic called beast-taming, something not just anyone could possess. Kyle burst out laughing, clutching his stomach at what he thought was a ridiculous joke. He said he had never even heard of such magic, telling Yu that if he wanted to brag, he should at least make up something believable. But Yu did not bother arguing back. He simply raised an eyebrow, and all the fire tigers nearby stood up together, surrounding them in a circle before bowing low as if awaiting their master's command. Yu then spoke, mentioning that across the 6 populated regions, there was an old saying, "The ancient cicada knows not of spring and autumn, but that does not mean spring and autumn do not exist." Many of the students had initially assumed he was lying, but seeing all the fire tigers submit like this left them completely stunned. Stepping in front of Canis Charlotte, he waved his hand to open a magic circle and recalled all the fire tigers inside, before she turned to Yu and asked why he had left the innate magic section blank on his enrollment form. He quickly tried to brush it off, casually replying that since no one had mentioned it to him, he had no idea he was supposed to. Not wanting to press him any further, Canis Charlotte changed the subject, announcing that today's lesson was over. She added that due to an urgent matter, they were dismissed early to do as they pleased. With the class dismissed, Yu finally let out a sigh of relief. He had been scared half to death. Honestly, 99% of what Hugh just said was total BS. Luckily, he'd heard legends about this specific talent before, or he never would have fooled those guys. As the students finally started heading home, our boy Hugh was shining so brightly that he easily caught the attention of both beautiful girls walking next to him. Muscle girl Ajin kept slapping him hard on the back, constantly praising him for hiding his true power. He just laughed it off. Sure, he was happy, but man, those slaps seriously hurt. Seeing Hugh laughing and chatting happily with the girls, Kyle couldn't stand it. He threw a shady comment about Hugh's magic talent, mocking him for not lifting a single finger during the entrance exam. The other students immediately caught on and started calling him out. They blamed him for just standing by and watching them get brutally toyed with, even though he clearly had the power to control magic beasts. Someone even sarcastically accused him of doing it on purpose just to make a move on the goddess, Aiza. Ejin couldn't stand their whining any longer and stepped in to defend him, arguing that just because he could control them didn't mean he would do something so shameless. Besides, if Hugh had taken care of all the firewolves, what would they even be tested on? This instantly shut up the jealous boys. That's when Aiza chimed in, adding that at the end of the day, talent still requires hard work and training. And besides, Kyle's wind wall at the time wasn't even enough to stop the firewolf. If Hugh hadn't stepped in when he did, we'd probably all be dead by now. While this calmed the rest of the group, it was a massive, accidental slap to Kyle's face. He was absolutely furious to hear that his absolute strongest spell was completely useless in her eyes. Convincing himself that Aiza was only lying to protect Hugh, he was practically burning with jealousy. Meanwhile, Canis Charlotte immediately rushed to Principal Asima's office to report the news right after finishing her first day orientation. Bursting through the door with an excited look, she shouted, "Sir, I have found someone with beast-taming magic talent." Asima stopped writing and asked Connie seriously, just how advanced is this student's beast summoning and control ability? For now, Connie was still unsure of his exact power level, but the fact that he easily tamed a summoned magic beast made him a highly promising prospect. Asima nodded in satisfaction, figuring this kid would probably be of great help to her in the future. Lunch break flew by in the blink of an eye. Aiza stared at the schedule and noted that their next class would cover the history and development of Elsoa. Hearing this, a cold sweat broke out on Hugh's forehead. He couldn't help but wonder if the time he blew an entire city to ashes had somehow made it into the history books. Before he could find out, Professor Canis Charlotte suddenly appeared with an extremely serious expression. She ordered him to come with her and dragged him straight to the Judgment Tower. Standing in such a sacred place within the Royal Academy, Hugh's face tensed up, totally clueless about why she had brought him here. Instead of answering, Connie stepped into the center of the hall, activated a magic circle, and began the succession ritual. She asked him if he would accept becoming the successor of the legendary flame witch, Canis Charlotte. She expected him to jump at the offer immediately, but to her shock, the guy flat out rejected her without a single second thought. "No way, lady. I came here to find a wife, not to be someone's errand boy." But then, a light bulb went off in his head. If his master agreed to be his wife, he'd gladly reconsider. Since Canis Charlotte threw a massive tantrum and refused, Hugh saw no other choice but to pack up and head home. "Do you really think you can find a wife with your current status? Don't you remember why you were even allowed to enroll here?" Her words immediately stopped him in his tracks. She had a point. When he first arrived in the human world, the cost of living was ridiculously high. Back then, killing a monster only paid a measly 3 coins. He went from a big spender to the absolute bottom of society. If this dirt-poor storyline dragged on for hundreds of chapters, he'd never get a wife. No way. This tragic, cliched plot absolutely cannot happen. Realizing he had finally come to his senses, Canis Charlotte resumed the ritual amid the warm, beautiful glow of the flames. She asked him once more if he wanted to become her successor. If he agreed, he could use this status and honor to inherit her entire fortune. Using money to bribe someone? Is that supposed to be noble? Well, maybe not for others, but for him, It was a solid yes. Throw pride and moral philosophies out the window. He was absolutely going to cling to this powerhouse's golden thigh. Master, my future meals are all on you now. With that, Connie Charlotte was suddenly pushed flat onto the ground. So he clung tightly to her leg, making her feel so uncomfortable that she insisted he let go. But who would have thought this gold-digging, perverted leech of a guy would completely refuse to let go? Because of that, the moment the ceremony ended, a master-disciple seal branded itself right onto his forehead. Connie Charlotte originally just wanted a verbal agreement, but now, even the master-disciple seal is permanently engraved. If she ever wants to back out in the future, she's completely stuck. Fortunately, the seal doesn't normally show itself. She could only hope her new student wouldn't run around brainlessly bragging about it to everyone. For a whole day, Yu was dragged away for no reason and went completely off the grid. During their break, the students gathered in the cafeteria for lunch, gossiping about him nonstop. The Judgment Tower is where the Royal Academy trials or punishes students, and that's exactly where Yu was dragged. Ejin and Isa couldn't wrap their heads around what kind of terrible crime he could have committed. Seeing both girls looking so worried, Kyle smugly piped up, claiming that Yu's beast-taming talent was nothing but a scam. He claimed the Academy had probably caught on this time and kicked him out for good. In his eyes, commoners are ultimately just low-class peasants. Trash belongs with trash, so why the hell are they even crying over him? Hearing these nasty remarks, both girls felt incredibly disgusted. Kyle was clearly just suffering from a classic case of sour grapes. Seeing their sharp reactions, he scoffed and accused them of being nothing but shallow, boy-crazy girls anyway. Isa had been holding back this whole time, but she finally snapped and angrily reminded him that everyone had seen Yu's beast-taming talent with their own eyes. Since they still didn't know the full story, she warned Kyle that he'd better watch his mouth. And right on cue, speak of the devil, Yu finally showed up. Yu appeared, leaning casually against the exit like an absolute boss. Hanging from his hip was a fat pouch of coins he had just smoothly extorted from the beautiful Lady Connie. The moment they saw him, the group crowded around with eager greetings. Ajin worriedly asked him what on earth happened after he was dragged away yesterday. Before Yu could even get a word out, the long-haired Kyle cut in, mocking that he must have been expelled. To ease his friends' minds and shut up the trash talker once and for all, Yu casually revealed that he had just signed a master-disciple contract with instructor Connie Charlotte. Not only that, he even revealed the seal to prove his words were absolute facts. The entire cafeteria went dead silent, but after a second of pure shock, Kyle quickly shrugged it off and demanded that Yu prove his real strength. He sneered that a beast-tamer who couldn't fight was nothing but a weak little fly. Isa stepped forward, calling him out for being completely unreasonable. She argued that beast-taming was an incredibly rare talent, making it only natural for Yu to be placed in the elite class. But before she could even finish her sentence, Kyle sliced off a lock of her hair as a cold warning for bystanders to stay out of his way. Mess with anyone else? Sure. But mess with his crush? You're dead meat, buddy. Yu agreed to the duel with a nod, offering a humble smile as he said, I hope you go easy on me, Master Kyle. For their battleground, they chose the practical combat arena. Yu got straight to the point, asking about the rules and conditions of the duel. Kyle smirked slyly before throwing out demands that were completely rigged in his favor. He demanded they fight with their absolute maximum power, and if Yu lost, he would have to pack his bags and get out of the class. Hearing this, Ejin clenched her fists in anger, knowing this was an absolute low blow. Kyle knew damn well that Yu was a beast-tamer, yet there wasn't a single monster in the arena. Demanding he show his full strength under these conditions was pure, unadulterated bullying. But the shamelessness didn't stop there. Kyle's intent to completely crush Yu was painfully obvious. Before even launching an attack, he summoned a sword straight out of thin air. The moment Isa saw it, her face went pale with panic. According to the legends she knew, the ancestors of the Bolé family had once received incredible gifts from the Elemental King. And among those priceless treasures, the rarest of them all was a legendary sword of immense power known as the Verdant Shin. The moment Yu laid eyes on the weapon, he was completely captivated. Pointing straight at the blade, he boldly declared that if he won the match, the Verdant Shin would be changing owners. He even threw in a mocking grin, asking if Kyle was too scared of losing. Of course, the long-haired arrogant prick took the bait instantly. Taking the bet, Kyle immediately began channeling his absolute strongest attack. He began chanting under his breath, infusing the sword with destructive magic. The moment he finished the chant, he swung his arm, unleashing a devastating strike called Wind's Judgment, straight at Yu. The slash surged with overwhelming power, carrying wind magic strong enough to split the very earth in half. But as the attack crashed down, it was suddenly stopped dead in its tracks, without dealing a single scratch. Everyone stood frozen in sheer disbelief, watching Yu effortlessly block the attack with just one hand. With a mind-blowing defense like this, the outcome of this fight is already a foregone conclusion. Man, this sword is gorgeous, so don't mind if I take it. And just like that, the weapon has a brand new owner. Since Kyle couldn't even scratch him, his precious weapon is gone for good, and there is no way he can get it back. But the show is far from over. This time, it is Yu's turn to strike. Kyle had the nerve to attack the beautiful Aisa, the girl Yu holds dear, so he is going to pay him back twofold. Yu gently places his hand against Kyle's chest, and with just a tiny bit of force, Kyle's chest tightens up as he coughs up a spray of crimson blood. His entire body is blasted back by an overwhelming force, sending him flying through the air. The duel ends, leaving both his opponent and the onlookers utterly speechless. Kyle struggles to push himself up, staring in utter horror at the pool of blood on the floor. But despite taking a direct hit, he refuses to accept his defeat. If he is not convinced, there is no way in hell he's backing down. Meanwhile, Aisa and Ejin happily run over to Yu, showering him with endless praise. Since it is their first time seeing him in action, it takes them a few minutes to fully process what just happened. Since class is over, and they have nothing to do this afternoon, Ejin suggests hitting up a fancy restaurant to celebrate. The other two love the idea and raise their hands in agreement, starting a lively chat about what to order. While the three of them are having a great time, Kyle is starting to lose his mind. The emerald green sylph sword is a sacred family heirloom, yet he used it as a bet and let it fall into someone else's hands. If his father finds out, he will be beaten like a punching bag, and his future will be darker than a black hole. Just thinking about it terrifies him, so Kyle throws away his pride, runs over to block their path, and gets straight to the point. He declares that Yu cannot take the sword. Suspecting that Yu played dirty, he demands a rematch to make things fair. Without a second thought, Yu flat out rejects him. After all, if they keep restarting every time someone loses, they will be here until midnight. Realizing he can't talk his way into getting it back, Kyle decides to take it by force, loudly declaring that no one is leaving unless they hand over his sword. He then uses his magic to whip up a violent tornado around Yu's group, clearly intending to trap them. Suddenly, the sword vibrates, and Yu can feel a powerful bond forming between him and the weapon. He is the winner, and the sword has accepted him as its master. You can't just hand something over and then demand it back whenever you feel like it. Left with no other option, Kyle goes all out and unleashes his magic. The raging windstorm sweeps in, threatening to shred the three of them to pieces. But right in the middle of it, something unexpected happens. A surge of magical power erupts from the sword, completely shattering Kyle's wind barrier. A warm, brilliant green light fills the air as the divine sword floats up into the sky. Wrapped in a mini vortex, the wind slowly dissipates to reveal a beautiful green-haired girl, leaving everyone staring in absolute awe. She floats over to Yu, bowing gracefully as she introduces herself as Sylph, the spirit sword of the Elemental King. However, things are different now. According to their contract, Yu is her new master, and she is bound to obey his every command. Hearing this, Kyle throws a total tantrum, absolutely refusing to accept it. He beats his chest, claiming he is her true master. He then blames her for not showing her power sooner, which caused him to lose so miserably, and arrogantly orders Sylph to return to his side immediately without question. Hearing Kyle's shameless excuses, Ejin can only sigh, amazed that someone could actually be this thick-skinned. Yu doesn't bother replying to Kyle right away. He looks at Sylph and asks if she actually wants to go back to her former master. Sylph shakes her head without a moment of hesitation, declaring that he is simply not worthy. She points out that the very moment Kyle used her as a wager, he lost all rights to own her. On top of that, losing so miserably means he deserves to be abandoned. Secondly, to a spirit sword, strength is everything. Since Yu won, she is more than willing to serve him. Now that everything is clear, there is no point in arguing any further. Yu advises him to just give up and stop embarrassing himself. With that, he leans down, gently pats Sylph on the head, and says, "I'm sorry for treating you like a prize in a bet, and I only got you because I won. Are you still willing to stand by my side and help me out?" And of course, when a handsome guy speaks, everything he says is right. Sylph smiles and nods in agreement immediately. Watching this heartwarming display of loyalty between master and spirit, Kyle feels like choking on his own rage. Losing the duel was bad enough, but being metaphorically stabbed in the back by his own weapon is a whole new level of humiliation. Kyle clenches his fists, burning with absolute rage. Since they mocked him for being weak, he is going to show them his true power and blow their minds. A magic circle expands. In the name of the prestigious Bolay family, Kyle decides to go all out and risk it all against them, unleashing his fire magic with what he believes is his absolute strongest spell. Kyle raised his hand high, and a massive column of fire erupted, radiating an overwhelming, suffocating heat. Seeing him go this far, Eugene started to worry, fearing Kyle might lose control and level the entire arena. But Yu saw it coming. He knew exactly how to shut down that Phoenix soul wave coming his way. Just as he was about to counter, Sinf grabbed his hand and cried out, "Master, use me, quick!" He gave her a firm nod. The moment the fire phoenix roared toward him, he gripped his sword and unleashed two massive, lightning-fast slashes. Pure magic stood no chance against a divine weapon and shattered instantly. The fire phoenix imploded, triggering a massive blast that sent shockwaves ripping through the area. Poor Kyle took the brunt of the backlash and got blown away by a massive shockwave, while Eugene and Aisha barely managed to throw up their magic shields in time, just to keep themselves safe. Once the smoke and dust finally settled, everyone looked to see a battered, weakened Kyle, lying in the rubble like a total loser. It was almost sad, but honestly, he totally deserved it. With Kyle's trash attitude successfully adjusted, Yu and his crew headed straight to a restaurant and ordered a massive feast to celebrate. After all, the fastest way to a girl's heart is through her stomach. Seizing the moment, Yu, the self-proclaimed king of Riz and absolute destroyer of pickup lines, smirked and asked, "Hey Aisha, do you know the absolute best way to eat these?" Being a practical girl, Aisha immediately said, "While they're hot, of course." But his punchline was on a whole other level. "Nope, they taste best when I feed them to you." Erin immediately rolled her eyes, and though she understood the theory, she was definitely passing on this cringeworthy PDA. She hadn't even touched her food yet, and she already felt sick to her stomach. Meanwhile, Vice Principal Cree was getting a full report of the drama between Kyle and Yu, courtesy of his paper doll spy. Cree let out a frustrated sigh. Since Yu was the one causing trouble, he figured he'd just let the kid's master deal with it. But as for the divine sword, Sinf, now that a sword spirit had awakened under Yu's ownership, there was no way the Bowles family would just let this slide. They'd probably march right over and make life miserable for everyone. Back in the dorms, with a very full stomach, Yu was rolling around on his bed, unable to sleep. Half of it was because the human world's food was just way too good, and the other half was his hopelessly romantic daydreaming about his future wife, Aisha. He was literally picturing Aisha in a cute short skirt. Sinf, resting in the corner, saw her master squirming around like a hyperactive worm. She materialized, crept up on him, and teased, "Well, master, someone's in an exceptionally good mood." Lost in his own little fantasy world, Yu nearly jumped out of his skin and let out a high-pitched shriek. Once his heart finally settled back in his chest, he glared at Sinf and whispered, "Look, from now on, give me a heads up before you just pop out like that, okay?" But Sinf was way too innocent to understand why he was so worked up. Right now, our boy was absolutely ecstatic, practically walking on sunshine. Hearing this, Sinf's mind immediately went to, well, her master needing to release some tension of the physical variety. And as a highly dedicated sword spirit, working solely out of passion and not caring about pocket change, she politely offered to help him relieve that difficult urge. Yu's face turned beet red as steam practically blew out of his ears. You could tell he was low-key thrilled, but he had to play it cool and act shy. A second later, he slowly nodded. Deal closed. But then, Sinf casually whipped out a pair of razor-sharp scissors and said with a straight face, "It might hurt a little, master, but don't worry. I'll be very gentle." Honestly, what did he expect from a sword spirit? In her little mind, if there was an annoying problem down there, you just snip it off. Realizing her terrifying plan, Yu immediately dropped to his knees, begging for mercy and admitting he was dead wrong. No, please don't touch anything. I can handle my own business." But while Yu was busy saving his manhood, his recent trouble had already reached Charlotte. First thing in the morning, she dragged him to her office and chewed him out. "You literally just signed the contract, and you've already exposed it. And then you go and duel Kyle on your own? Are you trying to make my life miserable or what?" But unfortunately for her, Yu wasn't the type to just take a scolding. He immediately fired back. "Look, everyone in the academy was going to find out about the contract sooner or later. What's the big deal if they find out now? And about the divine sword? He was the one who challenged me for it. That guy has hated me from day one anyway. His only mistake was being too arrogant. I just capitalized on a tiny mistake, and thanks to my brilliant brain, I beat him. Honestly, Charlotte's new disciple was just as cocky as his opponent. Charlotte sighed in defeat, walking over to her bookshelf to search for something while warning him to keep a low profile. For now, just stay here and study basic magic. We'll figure out the rest later. Suddenly remembering something, she added, "And stop calling me master. It makes me sound old." Seizing his chance, Yu beamed and said, "Awesome. Can I call you my wife instead?" Smooth talker, but his reward was a swift, painful smack to the back of his head from a very irritated Charlotte. What was that? The wind is so loud I can't hear a thing. Having just tasted her fist, Yu wouldn't dare repeat it even if she paid him. Yeah, maybe Master was safer after all. Leaving Yu to self-study magic, Charlotte slipped away to a quiet corner to speak with the principal. Headmaster Aisman assured her that he had already taken care of the Bowles family and the whole divine sword situation. However, they had already caught wind that Yu was her disciple. Because of this, he instructed her to bring Yu to the upcoming Magic Exchange Conference next week to see what they were planning. Charlotte nodded in agreement. The headmaster said no more, only hoping that the upcoming magic conference would go smoothly. This magic can help you awaken your own innate magical talent. Charlotte knew her teacher was always worrying about her. She had known Aisman since she was a little girl, so she always held a deep sense of respect for him. If her innate magic could truly be unleashed, she would finally be able to shoulder some of his heavy burdens in the future. Meanwhile, back with Yu, he was completely engrossed in the book in his hands, carefully reading every single page. He found this particular section rather intriguing. According to the text, humans utilize non-attribute magic as a foundation, combining it with the great natural elements to cast spells. Just then, Sylph brought over some tea. After handing it to him, she sat down in a corner and quietly observed Yu. Yu stopped reading, paused, and asked her what was on her mind. Finally speaking her mind, Sylph asked him why he didn't just tell the teacher the truth. After all, he was incredibly powerful, wasn't he? Yu's expression immediately darkened. After a brief silence, he slowly began to explain. When your power becomes limitless, totally and utterly broken, transcending everyone else, people start to see you as a freak. He had already tasted that reality. People would respect you, flatter you, and even fear you, before gradually drifting away. In the past, he once wanted to get close to a girl, but when he spoke to her, he wasn't met with love. Instead, she looked absolutely terrified, as if a single misstep on his part would wipe out her entire family. He used to have teammates too, but because he was immortal, they all ended up kicking the bucket one by one. Though he stood at the very top of the food chain, utterly alone, he actually found his current life quite peaceful. Blending in as just another ordinary student really wasn't a bad feeling at all. While Yu was busy romanticizing his definition of a normal life, the news of his successor pact had already become the hottest gossip among the academy students. Some claimed he and Charlotte were definitely lovers because of the mark on his forehead, while others whispered that they were hooking up, which explained why they were always skipping class together. Even a blind person could see there was something fishy going on between them. As the sun began to set, Charlotte felt a bit guilty for abandoning her student all day, so she brought some food to his place. On her way, she kept thinking about lifting the pact seal to avoid any unnecessary drama. But the moment she swung the door open, she saw him slacking off, lazily resting his head right in another girl's lap. Furious, Charlotte blew her top, unleashing a blast of fire that left Yu with a completely fried afro. In her eyes, the adorable sword spirit got a free pass. But her lazy master still needed to hear the news she came to deliver. Clearing her throat, she informed him that he would be joining her at the Magic Exchange Convention in the Imperial Capital next week. She hadn't planned on bringing him at first, but she never expected him to actually claim the divine sword of the Bowles family. A divine sword taking human form was no small matter, so the event organizers were absolutely determined to have him there. If he refused, the people around him would only get harassed. Yu just laughed it off as if it were nothing. If we're going, we're going. What's there to be afraid of? When the time comes, they'll find out who is really threatening who. But for now, the convention could wait. While Charlotte, and Yu were away preparing for the big event, Vice Principal Clay took over their class. The class proceeded as usual, though both Yu and Kyle were notably absent. A group of boys started whispering, gossiping that Kyle's sudden disappearance was definitely due to his last duel with you. They warned each other that you had serious backing now, and messing with him meant getting instantly deleted. Speak of the devil, you showed up right then. Having overheard their entire conversation, he walked up and said, "Has it really been that long since I visited the arena? Because I could swear I hear a few pesky flies buzzing around here." Seeing him like they'd just seen a ghost, the boys quickly made excuses and ran for their lives. You, meanwhile, was exempt from practical combat classes anyway. Aisha, who had missed him after not seeing him for so long, ran over to ask what brought him there today. You handed her a rose, putting on a dramatic, deeply longing act just to tease her. Though she knew he was just playing, the rumors still weighed heavily on her mind, instantly killing her mood. Suddenly, remembering his upcoming trip with Professor Kerr Charlotte to the Magic Exchange Convention, Aisha asked if the rumors were true. Yu nodded in confirmation, resuming his smug, flirtatious attitude. He told her not to miss him too much, promising he'd be back in just a few days. A few days apart, and this pervert is still the same old pervert. The mocking voice belonged to Ajin, a muscular girl carrying a massive axe, who didn't hesitate to throw a verbal dagger at him. Yu wasn't about to take that lying down and immediately fired back. "Well, look who it is. After all this time, I hope a violent girl like you didn't get your butt kicked in your recent battles." The awkward tension in the air was instantly broken. Aisha smiled gently. Seeing the three of them bantering like this always felt the most natural and comfortable. The day of departure finally arrived. In the crisp early morning air, the carriages and escorts were all lined up, yet even after waiting for ages, you still couldn't spot Aisha anywhere. Coming to see him off, Sin told him that Aisha wasn't in her room, but he still tried to linger. His attempts to buy time were instantly brushed off by Connie Charlotte. They were currently being targeted, so they had to leave right away, or else they would have to deal with her fierce side. He had no choice but to reluctantly comply. Not long after their carriage departed, a dark figure materialized right behind Aisha. She had been quietly watching them from afar, but now her attention was pulled away by this intruder. The dark figure let out a sinister laugh, pointing out that the entire school was now completely unguarded. He suggested that tonight would be the perfect time for her to carry out her assigned mission. With a smirk, he even threw a sarcastic jab at that young man, Yu, noting that he clearly had feelings for his young lady. Aisha quickly turned around, insisting that Yu had absolutely nothing to do with this. She begged him not to report anything about Yu to her lord or her parents, even swallowing her pride to plead with him. The dark figure cackled with glee, warning her that if she wanted him to stay quiet, she had better prove herself by carrying out her mission tonight. Not long after leaving the academy, while sitting in the carriage, Connie Charlotte began sharing details about the conference so Yu could get up to speed. According to what she knew, the annual Magic Exchange Conference was rotated between the Powerline, Capella, and Isis families. It was basically a grand banquet for the major noble houses to showcase their magical achievements and exchange vital intel. The Powerline family consisted of descendants of the founding hero, holding a status rivaling the royal family itself. The Isis family commanded most of the military power, while the Capella family controlled the majority of the economy and the pharmaceutical industry. This time, the Magic Exchange Conference was hosted by the Capella family. Connie Charlotte repeatedly warned him to be careful, but Yu completely tuned her out, far more interested in the food as he gestured for Sin to sit beside him. He declared that once they arrived, they had to stuff their faces. Connie Charlotte could only sigh in sheer helplessness, wondering if bringing him along was going to be a blessing or a curse. After several grueling days of riding in the carriage, they finally arrived at their destination. Since Connie Charlotte was a highly distinguished guest, people were already waiting to serve her the moment she stepped down. The lord of the estate had been eagerly anticipating her arrival, so the butler rushed over to warmly welcome her the second he spotted her. In stark contrast to the butler's enthusiastic welcome, she bluntly told him that she was busy and there was no need to disturb the family head. Giving him a sharp, warning glare, she turned to Yu and Sin, telling them to head into the hall first to find a place to relax, while she went to send a reply to Professor Aceman, promising to be right back. Connie Charlotte opened her mouth to warn them about something else, but then decided against it, simply turning on her heel and walking away. As they parted ways, one to handle personal business and the others to slip into the banquet hall, Yu and Sin set off to find some delicious food to satisfy their growling stomachs. When the massive double doors swung open, the sheer opulence of the high nobility was on full display. Wealthy young lords and ladies were draped in expensive jewelry and lavish formal wear. but the moment they saw Yu's eyes light up at the sight of the food, their faces twisted in sheer disgust. Yu couldn't care less about their snobby looks. With a fork in one hand and grabbing food with the other, he laughed and joked with Sin as they absolutely raised the banquet table. Not too far away, the host of the event, Wanda Capella, shoved a maid to the ground, viciously berating her for failing to bring the beauty to him as instructed. Standing nearby, the butler eagerly joined in with some shameless brown-nosing. Yu, who was eating close by, couldn't stand watching this blatant bullying. He turned to Sin, loudly making sarcastic remarks that clearly called out their pathetic behavior. Wanda Capella glared in the direction of the voice, only to see two incredibly low-class-looking intruders. Though he desperately wanted to kick them out on the spot, he managed to keep his cool and demanded to know who they were, and whether they even had an invitation. The moment they answered no, the entire room erupted in whispers. The snobbish nobles immediately assumed the duo were just peasants who had sneaked in for free food, muttering complaints about the Capella family's sloppy security. Infuriated by their presence, Wanda Capella lost his temper and demanded that they be thrown out immediately. Sin quickly lost his patience and was ready to beat the guy to a pulp, but Yu held him back. Yu stepped forward and calmly explained that he was Connie Charlotte's disciple, which was why he didn't have a personal invitation on him. But the arrogant host refused to believe him, scoffing that his beloved Charlotte was far too beautiful to ever take such a filthy peasant as her disciple. He babbled on without a shred of shame, though his words didn't sit well with the onlookers. Everyone there knew he had been desperately pursuing Connie Charlotte but kept getting rejected, so the sudden appearance of her disciple was bound to stir up some major drama. Just as the tension reached its peak, the female lead finally made her entrance as Connie Charlotte strolled right over to Yu. Confirming that he was indeed her disciple, she watched their host pull a total 180-degree flip right before her eyes. Wanda Capella laughed it off, trying to brush the awkwardness aside, before offering to personally show her their magical achievements as an apology, only to be flatly rejected by Connie Charlotte once again. She linked her arm through Yu's, and coolly told him that it wasn't necessary, as she and her fiancé would much rather look around on their own. They say even lightning spares you during dinner, but here's who, minding his own business and already catching stray bullets. The entire hall froze for a split second after that bombshell. Even he was breaking into a cold sweat. That's when Charlotte leaned in and whispered that the Capella family had been using their power to force her into marriage, so this was the perfect excuse to shut them down once and for all. Hearing this, Hu's face completely froze, his lips twitching into a super awkward smile. But a second later, he played along, declaring himself to be the fiancé of the girl standing right next to him. And just like that, Wanda Capella's unrequited love turned into pure, boiling hatred. He immediately used the magic exhibition as an excuse to flaunt his achievements and humiliate the two of them. With a clap of his hands, the maidservants brought out a special potion that his family had spent an entire year brewing, offering it to everyone for a taste. After taking a sip, one of the guests immediately showered it with praise, saying that while it was a bit bitter, sipping it slowly filled them with incredible energy and vitality. It was a true miracle drug. This high-concentration mana-restoring potion was Wanda Capella's absolute pride and joy. Riding high on the praise, he smugly aimed his verbal spear right at Charlotte and Hu. I heard some people showed up this year without a single achievement to their name, just here to freeload. How utterly embarrassing. Don't you agree, Charlotte? In response to those annoying words, a certain someone casually swiped the miracle drug straight onto the floor, grinning and playing it off as a clumsy slip of the hand. Needless to say, Wanda Capella was absolutely fuming. He screamed at Hu for ruining his precious potion, demanding to know if he had any idea how many rare ingredients went into it. Oh, please. Rare? That's debatable. Without even taking a sip, Hu could easily guess every single ingredient. He claimed he could easily whip up 10 bottles of this basic stuff in a single day. His prized potion was literally just cheap garbage in this guy's eyes. Wanda Capella threw a total fit, demanding Hu brew it right then and there to prove it. Otherwise, he warned, Hu shouldn't blame him when his whole crew jumps a single guy. Seeing Hu talk such a big game, Charlotte started to panic. But he told her to relax. He knew exactly what he was doing. All he needed was for her to help him gather a few ingredients. A short while later, everything was ready. Looking at a table piled with nothing but common vegetables, Wanda Capella burst into a mocking laugh. Ignoring the mockery, Hu rolled up his sleeves, channeled his inner master chef, and tossed in a few herbs to blow their minds. All right, fire's lit, and in goes some fine powder. He was tossing and stirring like a pro, and while the end result was still a mystery, the sheer aroma alone was already making everyone's mouths water. At first, they thought he was making a hot pot, but who would have guessed he was actually brewing a potion? Once the mixture was strained, he obtained a premium potion with a vibrant color that rivaled the Capella family's miracle drug. Right at that moment, a middle-aged man stepped forward and asked for a taste. Charlotte looked up and immediately recognized him as Mason, the head of magical pharmaceutics of the Empire. A true expert always knows, who happily agreed and handed it over. But the second Mason took a sip, his face completely changed. Good heavens, in all his years, he never thought he'd live to see the day someone brewed an actual mana elixir. Wanda Capella was utterly shocked upon hearing this. This had to be a joke. Everyone knew the recipe for the mana elixir had been lost for 300 years. How the hell could anyone brew that? Mason knew this, of course. The elixir existed, but for centuries no one had been able to crack the secret to its brewing process. Now that he had finally found it, there was no way he was letting it go. Mason stepped right up to Hu, bowed slightly, and offered to trade half of his entire fortune for the recipe. The fact that he was willing to give up more than half his wealth made everyone rethink the whole situation. The crowd went wild, and even Wanda Capella joined the frenzy, offering half his family's massive fortune just to get his hands on the recipe. He was sure he had this in the bag. After all, the Capella family was vastly richer than any ordinary noble. There was no way Hu could turn that down. But to everyone's shock, Hu actually rejected the offer, stating he wouldn't sell it to anyone. Now that's what you call a power move. Desperate, Wanda Capella decided to go all in, offering half his fortune plus a generous percentage of the product's sales commission. They say money can't buy everything, but if you throw enough of it around, it usually does. Hu did a complete U-turn at the last second, trading the recipe for an absolute mountain of wealth. I guess when you're this talented, getting rich really is a breeze. They were taken to a private room to finalize the deal. With the money safely transferred, it was time for Wanda to see the secret brewing method. According to Hu, the magic elixir wasn't defined by its ingredients, but by how it absorbed and condensed elemental magic from the air. With that, he tossed him a bundle wrapped in cloth, revealing a pot inside. This wasn't any ordinary pot, it was inscribed with a magic circle designed to absorb atmospheric elements. Using high-tier fire magic allows you to fuse the ingredients and the magic circle together. The magic circle gathers 10 high-concentration elements from the air, creating an elemental osmosis. So, surprisingly, low-grade ingredients actually boost the condensation effect and enhance the elements, while high-grade ingredients do the exact opposite. With the deal sealed, Charlotte was about to leave, but Wanda Capella stepped in her way. He mentioned that the recent incident at Mount Larada was far from normal, especially since he had sent people to help the locals. That's when they discovered a hidden cave deep inside the volcano, along with the whereabouts of the legendary beast, the Blazing Qilin. Hu was completely baffled. As far as he knew, the Blazing Qilin was native to the eastern continent. So what on earth was it doing all the way out here? The man had to agree with his logic, but they couldn't rule out the possibility that the beast was guarding a blazing fire jade, an incredibly rare gem straight out of Eastern legends. Because of this, he was putting together a team to seize the treasure, and wanted to know if the two of them would join him. If they succeeded, they'd get the Qilin, and he would keep the precious gem. Connie Charlotte didn't hesitate for a second, immediately accepting the offer. The expedition was scheduled to start in 3 days, so for now, he told the master and disciple to just stay put and make sure they were fully prepared. Once the two of them had left, the butler finally stepped forward to question his master. Was it really wise to trade half their fortune for a secret that the kid could leak at any moment? Heck, he might not even keep his mouth shut about the Qilin and the gem either. Are you sure this is a good idea? Wanda Capella simply gave a wicked grin and told him not to worry. He promised to take them there, but he never promised to bring them back. Burying a secret forever would be child's play. The butler nodded, finally understanding. Having served his boss for so long, he knew nobody could match him when it came to sheer malice and cunning. Meanwhile, Connie Charlotte and her disciple ran into a bit of an unexpected problem. Since a massive convention was being held in town, all the rooms in the inn were fully booked, leaving them with only one single room to share. The maid hoped they would understand and make do for a few days. Connie Charlotte didn't care at all. She casually strolled in and told the maid she could leave. The moment they stepped inside, Hu casually tossed their bags onto the table. Curiously, he asked his master why she wanted the Qilin instead of the precious gem. Connie Charlotte, of course, had her own motives. To her, the Qilin's blood was the key to turning ordinary mortal flames into divine heavenly fire, capable of incinerating anything. Only by drinking its blood could she finally awaken her innate magical talent. Then, she casually admitted that her taking him in as her disciple was solely so he could help her pull this whole thing off. Hu had known he was being used from the start, so he immediately called his master out for being incredibly selfish. But hey, it was fine because he was even more selfish than her. If it were up to him, he wouldn't just take the Qilin, he'd swipe the treasure gem too, just to have the complete set. But realistically, they only had 3 days to prepare, and right now, he couldn't even gather a single speck of magical energy. How was he supposed to fight anyone like this? To avoid any disastrous setbacks, Caney Charlotte decided she had no choice but to replenish his mana directly through their contract. To get started, she sat down on the bed and ordered him to quickly activate the magic crest on his forehead. Hu blankly complied, but before he could even figure out how the transfer worked, she suddenly grabbed his head and shoved it downward. A magic circle instantly flared to life, illuminating the entire room in a bright glow. Blushing furiously, Connie Charlotte stammered out an explanation, saying that because of their previous accident, her matching crest had ended up on her thigh. She explained that this was an ancient ritual to transfer mana, allowing him to absorb her power and cast fire magic. It might look a bit bizarre, but it was highly effective. Normally, he would have made a snide remark by now. But why was he lying completely motionless, looking like he had just clinically passed away? Panicking slightly, Connie Charlotte hurriedly grabbed him by the head and pulled him up to check if he was still breathing. Instead of a corpse, she was met with a look of pure, ecstatic bliss, a goofy grin plastered across his face, and 2 massive streams of blood gushing from his nose. That wasn't a face of pain, he looked like a man who had just ascended straight to heaven. Over the next few days, the butler kept a close eye on Connie Charlotte and her disciple, reporting their every move back to his master. One morning, as Wanda Capella was enjoying his breakfast, he received word that the duo hadn't set foot outside their room even once. However, the butler added that strange, suggestive noises could occasionally be heard from inside, enough to make any adult blush and let their imagination run wild. Wanda Capella couldn't even cut his meat straight after hearing that. He slammed his fist onto the table in rage, absolutely furious that he was being outdone by some snot-nosed brat. He kept muttering that Connie Charlotte's taste in men was seriously messed up, otherwise she would have recognized an elite specimen like him by now. The man sitting across from him, having his meal completely ruined by the outburst, spoke up to remind him. "Why so tense, Lord Wanda? Didn't you hire me specifically to get rid of those two?" This platinum-haired man was Hastan, one of the 4 legendary mages of the Pham Empire, famously known as the Void Walker. As the very first human to ever set foot in the Void Realm, his presence here today was due to a highly classified request to handle a matter of grave importance. While a sinister plot was brewing on one side, the target of that plot wasn't just sitting around waiting to be slaughtered. Having fully absorbed Connie Charlotte's mana, Hu was now finally capable of casting fire magic. He raised his hand, testing it out by summoning a tiny flame. Back in the day, he only threw around high-tier hellfire, so this was actually his first time playing with the basic stuff. It turned out to be just as easy as he expected, and honestly, pretty fun to play with. Now that he could control the fire element, he wouldn't have to worry about giving away his true identity anymore. His master had transferred her mana out of pure worry for their upcoming journey, lecturing him to save every drop of it for actual combat. But what did this guy do? He went right ahead and wasted it all in one go, shaping the flames into a glowing heart just to show off. Connie clenched her fists. She wanted peace, but this guy just kept pushing her buttons. Seriously, sometimes people are so frustrating it actually makes my chest hurt. Outside, a maid knocked on the door on behalf of her master, announcing that the carriage was ready and they would be setting off for Mount Lalada in a few minutes. Charlotte Kerr and Yu, both looking completely scorched and beaten up, finally stepped out of the room. Suddenly, Charlotte felt like someone was lurking behind her, secretly watching her every move. A dark shadow darted past, and at a glance, it looked a lot like the Void Walker, Hastan. She shrugged it off though. Without any real proof, there was no point in making accusations. Clicking her tongue, she just followed the maid to meet up with the others from the Royal Academy. Once Charlotte Kerr's group, and Headmaster Aisman set off, a mysterious intruder sneaked into the sacred rune tower that very night to steal something. Loud footsteps echoed down the corridors as a high-stakes chase unfolded, but the thief was eventually cornered at a dead end. Vice Principal Craig demanded that she hand over the stolen goods before activating a binding array, unleashing heavy chains to trap her, but she reacted instantly, leaping high to dodge the chains, shattering a nearby window, and making a daring escape. This late-night intruder was none other than Aisha. She had been ordered to retrieve a certain artifact, and now that it was in her hands, she just needed to smuggle it out to wrap up the mission. A few days later, at the foot of Mount Lalata, the traveling carriages suddenly ground to a halt. Yu practically scrambled out of the carriage, immediately throwing up his guts. Having to witness this pathetic sight several times a day, Wende Capella was losing his mind. He turned to Charlotte Kerr and complained, "If he gets motion sickness this easily, why didn't you tell me sooner?" What was supposed to be a one-day trip has turned into a multi-day nightmare because of him. Scratching her cheek in embarrassment, Charlotte Kerr replied that they had traveled by carriage before. She had no idea he would end up looking so completely pathetic this time. Before they could even figure out how long this trip would take at this rate, a terrified scream echoed from up ahead, and one of their scouts came running back in a panic. Chasing right behind him was a massive pack of mid-tier gale lizards. Every single one of them was baring its venomous fangs, hissing aggressively. They were supposed to be hunting a Qilin, yet somehow, these idiots managed to aggro a whole pack of gale lizards instead. Furious, Wende Capella glared at them and snapped, "While these beasts aren't incredibly dangerous, fighting off this many of them is going to be a massive waste of time and energy." He ordered everyone back into the carriages, deciding to put the Qilin hunt on hold for a moment and just focus on making a quick getaway. But as they were getting ready to bail, they turned around to see the most ridiculous sight. Yu was casually playing with the Gale Lizard King. According to Charlotte Kerr, Yu just happened to be slightly more popular with magical beasts and summons than the average person. Seriously, girl? This isn't slightly popular, he is basically a beast whisperer. A dumbfounded Wende Capella stammered, asking Yu to tell the lizards to clear the road. Yu was about to do just that, but then a brilliant idea popped into his head. Since he couldn't stand carriages, why not just ride the lizards instead? It was fast, kept his head from spinning, and riding out in the open air was way more fun anyway. Before long, the Qilin hunting party finally arrived at their destination. Standing right before them was the entrance to the cavern. Although everything seemed quiet, the Gale lizards were growling relentlessly, acting incredibly tense and anxious. Yu ordered them to leave, and after lighting up some lanterns, the group cautiously stepped inside to investigate. The cavern was pitch black and stifling hot. Everyone lined up single file, watching their step with absolute caution. Walking right behind Yu and Charlotte Kerr, Wende Capella kept quiet, but a sinister, malicious smirk crept onto his face. Sure, that little detour proved Yu could somehow tame wild beasts, but Wende Capella wasn't worried. He had absolute faith in Hastan's deadly skills. This expedition was going to be a nasty surprise for the two of them, a literal one-way ticket to the afterlife. The group kept pressing on until they finally saw the light of an exit ahead. They had reached the heart of Mount Lalata, a perilous chamber bubbling with scorching hot lava. Fortunately, the precious gem was sitting right there in plain sight, with no Qilin in sight to guard it. Thrilled, Wende Capella rushed forward to grab it, but Charlotte Kerr, sensing that something was terribly off, yelled for him to stop. At that exact moment, the glowing red lava began to bubble violently. A split second later, a massive silhouette burst forth, sending a terrified Wende Capella crashing flat onto his back. Rising 3 meters tall, the legendary blazing Qilin from the eastern continent had officially entered the field, radiating, terrifying, destructive fire magic. Instantly, the entire team braced themselves, preparing for a brutal battle. Charlotte Kerr warned you to fall back and wait for the right moment. After all, this was an incredibly rare and powerful beast. While it might not bring absolute apocalypse, it was still a nightmare to deal with and definitely wouldn't be easily subdued. Yu obediently nodded and stepped aside to watch the chaos unfold. Since he was currently trying to lay low as a total nobody, his hands were tied. Besides, his master was right. Against a mythical beast like the Qilin, the basic spells he had just learned would be completely useless if he tried to play the hero anyway. Stepping out there to help them take down that monster would mean blowing my cover. Man, being a good guy is never easy. The mages hired by Wende Capella finally began their attack. Facing a fire attribute beast in a place overflowing with lava meant only ice magic stood a chance. Together, they raised their staffs, cast their magic circles, and unleashed a spell called Glacial Freeze. Instantly, massive pillars of ice shot up from the ground, trapping the Kirin from all sides in a freezing matrix before sealing it inside a colossal ice coffin. The Kirin thrashed wildly, roaring as intense flames erupted from its entire body. The mages poured everything they had into it, but it didn't take long for the ice coffin to shatter, unleashing a massive wave of fire. Shards of ice exploded in every direction, violently slamming into the mages. The Kirin had broken their formation all on its own. Furious at being attacked, it bared its fangs and charged, desperate for revenge. Terrified of the beast, the hired mages scattered in panic. Just when they thought they were toast, Charlotte Scarlet leapt into action, clashing head-on with the beast, using her scarlet flame sword. The sharp blade grated against its rock-hard horn, screeching loudly. Even though an Eastern Kirin isn't quite as terrifying as an ice dragon, it was still more than enough to push her to her limits. With pure rage in its eyes, the Kirin roared and used its brute force to hurl Charlotte backward. In the chaos of the battle, the jewel was knocked off its pedestal and began rolling toward the edge of the cliff. Every single eye followed the rolling treasure, panic spreading across the crowd. They all thought it was going to plunge straight into the pit of boiling lava below. But then, Hugh swooped in out of nowhere. He dashed forward, snatched the treasure mid-air, kicked off the empty air, and landed safely right in front of their gaping faces. In this place, he was probably the only one who actually knew what he was holding. Hugh pointed out that everyone had it wrong from the start, thinking it was just some valuable jewel. But before he could even explain, he felt a swarm of tentacles lunging at him from behind. Hugh shoved Charlotte out of harm's way, but he couldn't dodge in time. He was wrapped up tight like a cocoon and dragged straight into a bizarre black vortex. By the time she realized what was happening, both Hugh and the jewel were completely gone. Even the Kirin couldn't escape, getting ensnared by the tentacles and left suspended in mid-air. Seizing the moment, Wanda Capella ordered all the mages to launch a coordinated attack. The second he gave the word, a barrage of ice spikes rained down, impaling the Kirin. After a brief struggle, the beast finally went down. With everything turning out completely different from what she had planned, Charlotte marched straight up to Wanda Capella and demanded to know why he had targeted her disciple. Finally, the mask came off as Wanda admitted he was the puppet master behind it all. He blamed her for rejecting his feelings and calling off their arranged marriage, which had humiliated him during the magic exchange event. The Capella family had been pushed around by Headmaster Aceman for far too long. Today, he had invited Hastan to settle all scores once and for all. Finally understanding everything, Charlotte's anger boiled over. She made it crystal clear that if any harm came to her disciple, not a single soul there would escape her wrath. And that was when the real enemy finally showed his face. Hastan stepped out of the black vortex, mockingly sneering that Hugh was probably already dinner for the Void Lord inside his domain, so she might as well give up hope. Those cruel words hit Charlotte like a physical blow, making it incredibly hard to keep her composure. Not only did this jerk show up just to take advantage of the chaos, but he actually dared to kidnap her disciple. Consumed by rage, Charlotte screamed, "Then I will make you pay with your life." With a fierce swing, she unleashed a devastating wave of high-tier fire magic straight at Hastan. Instead of dodging, Hastan calmly raised his hand and conjured a void gate to easily absorb her attack. Charlotte was one of the Empire's 4 pillar mages, but he was one of the 4 aces. His unique magic type gave him a slight edge over her. The blazing flames were swallowed whole by the void, only to be hurled right back at her when she least expected it. Acting like a mirror, her own attack was turned against her, something Charlotte never saw coming. She quickly leapt backward to dodge, but the explosive impact still managed to injure her. Looking down at her as she panted heavily, covered in dust and dirt, Hastan sneered, "Void magic is far beyond the basic elements. No matter how powerful your scarlet flame sword is, it stands absolutely no chance against it." Once again forced into a one-on-one fight with no backup, Charlotte grit her teeth, glaring with pure hatred at the treacherous crowd surrounding her. Suddenly, her eyes locked onto the Kirin pinned to the bank by the ice spikes. She had only one shot at this. Risking everything, Wende Capella rushed over and shrieked, "Lord Void, she is trying to drink the Kirin's blood to awaken her magic. We have to stop her." Hastan wasn't in any rush because he didn't believe the rumors, knowing the beast's blood was highly toxic. Forget awakening if she actually drinks that, she is going to sleep forever. Meanwhile, Charlotte dashed over, scooped up the Kirin's blood with her bare hands, and gulped it down, but she never expected the liquid to be burning hot, like boiling volcanic lava. Her mouth was seared, her throat was burning, and her internal organs felt like they were on fire. The pain was absolute agony. Charlotte writhed on the ground, screaming in sheer torment. Watching her struggle only amused Hastan. He scoffed at her stupidity for falling for Aceman's lies, since the blazing Kirin lived its entire life submerged in boiling lava. Drinking its blood raw meant her body would inevitably burn up from the inside out, leaving absolutely nothing behind. He didn't even need to lift a finger. She wouldn't last much longer anyway. Besides, trying to kill her now might accidentally trigger a backlash from the heavenly fire inside her. It was much safer to just leave her to rot. But fate has a funny way of working. Once a human pushes past their absolute limits, they enter a state of pure, chaotic potential. After enduring a hellish, skin-melting heat, Charlotte finally awakened her ultimate magic talent, the myriad-faced Lord. She slowly stood back up, her entire body cloaked in a brilliant golden fire. "You dare touch my disciple? I'll tear your damn house down." Making her threat crystal clear, Charlotte waved her hand, sending countless pillars of fire hurtling toward them. Terrified by this overwhelming power, Hastan Razun desperately tried to open a void vortex, but to his horror, even the Void Lord was too scared to answer his call. He could only watch in terror as the pillars of fire merged into a massive golden dragon, crashing down like lightning. It swept up everyone on the battlefield and swallowed them whole. The ground shook violently as rocks and mages were blasted into the air, leaving them scattered and broken across the dirt. Once the smoke and flames cleared, Hastan was left lying on the ground, his entire body charred black. Although he was still conscious, it was obvious he couldn't move a single muscle. Charlotte slowly descended to the ground, staring down at her hands. She had finally awakened her magic talent, so why didn't she feel happy? While everyone was distracted, a sudden round of applause echoed from behind her. Charlotte spun around and recognized the newcomer. It was Principal Uman, but she had no idea why her mentor was here, and even worse, he looked completely different. Lying on the ground, Hastan stared at the clueless girl and burst into a mocking laugh. A moment later, he spat out the truth. "Do you still not get it? This old bastard was targeting the day of your awakening from the very start. He's already been possessed by the Demon King." Charlotte couldn't believe her ears. According to the legends she knew, 400 years ago, a monster appeared with the ability to steal other people's magic talents. That monster ruled undefeated for 200 years. But after a fierce clash with the 7th Apostle, Celia, he vanished without a trace. She could have racked her brain forever, and still never guessed that her kind, gentle mentor, Uman, was actually that very devil. With his cover blown, Uman didn't waste any more time. In the blink of an eye, he teleported right in front of Charlotte and lifted her off the ground by her throat with one hand. He had only played the role of the benevolent guardian because he knew she could awaken the myriad-faced fire. Now, he could finally drop the act. Without hesitation, he began spitting cold, heartless words to shatter her spirit. With a menacing glare, Uman began to violently siphon the heavenly fire out of Charlotte's body, absorbing it into his own. Within seconds, the brilliant golden flames surrounding her faded away into nothingness. With the myriad-faced fire completely drained, she was useless to him. Without a shred of mercy, he threw her body ruthlessly to the hard ground. Lying nearby, Hastan was already playing his own funeral march in his head. He knew this old monster would come for him next. Even though he had desperately tried to summon help, that coward, the Void Lord, refused to show up and save him. Talk about awful luck. Getting abandoned by his own boss right in the middle of a fight meant he was practically already in his grave. But as he was cursing in his head, a rift in the void suddenly tore open. Except the figure emerging didn't just walk out, he literally ripped the portal wide open with his bare hands. Even the long-lost Void Lord was tossed out like a rag doll, dead before he could even gasp for air. Clutching a glowing emerald sword in his hand, he scanned the area. Finally, his gaze locked onto the battered, motionless girl lying on the dirt ground. He coldly asked, "Who did this?" Uman was a bit startled but he quickly regained his composure, admitting he was the one who knocked her out before casually kicking her limp body toward him. He then said that his battle with the Apostle Celia 300 years ago had taught him one crucial lesson. That is the power of innate talent. No matter how much ordinary magic you have, you can never defeat an apostle. To become stronger, he spent years enduring mockery and ridicule while hunting for high-tier talents. Now, he finally has heavenly fire and hellfire in his grasp. He truly believes that in the future, he can stand tall, fight an apostle, and rule over everyone. Hugh just scoffed, watching the old man drown in his own delusions of grandeur. "Keep talking big, old man. Try to hang on for a few more chapters. If you are gonna be a villain, you might as well go all the way." The old man unleashed the flame of myriad fires, sending a massive wave of magic flame to consume the survivors. But to Hugh, this high-level spell was nothing. With a simple swing of his sword, he sliced the wave of fire right in half, played around with it for a bit, and then tossed it all straight down into the lava pit below. A young man who was not even from the Paulette family, yet could wield the divine sword. Asmund had absolutely no idea who this guy was. Who on earth was he to be this powerful? Hugh smirked playfully and teased, "Take a guess. If you get it right, there is a prize." With that, he lunged forward to attack. Though slightly panicked, Asmund managed to keep his cool. He stomped his foot, activating a magic circle to summon the earth around him. Rocks and dirt shot up and crashed down on Hugh, trying to trap him inside. Hugh gripped his brilliant green Thon Sin sword and slashed through the air, unleashing a tempest of rapid strikes that shattered the solid stone wall. On top of that, he seized the chance to send a massive slash, flying right at Asmund. Wind magic formed a raging tornado around the attack as it roared forward. Asmund quickly conjured a defensive barrier. Another stolen talent that he always boasted was an absolute impenetrable defense. Showing no signs of stopping, Hugh kept up the pressure, playfully delivering a spine-chilling line. "Oh, I forgot to mention, when an elder asks a question, failing to answer gets you punished." Which made perfect sense, because if we went by his actual age, he could not even remember how many centuries he had been alive. So calling himself an elder was not really a stretch at all. Gripping the Thon Sin sword, Hugh unleashed an endless barrage of sword chi against Asmund's barrier. The sheer power was unreal. Following a thunderous explosion, rocks began to rain down as the volcano's crater suffered a massive collapse. Talk about collateral damage. Hastan knew damn well that if he kept lying there, he would end up buried alive. Taking advantage of the chaos, he scrambled to his feet, struggling to drag his battered body away. As Capella stumbled past Wanda, he muttered a few curses, blaming the greedy bastard for not doing his research first. Now that those two monsters were fighting, whoever won, his own tiny life would still be forfeit. Running away was definitely his best option out of the 36 classic strategies. On Asmund's side, things were looking incredibly grim. Hugh was simply too powerful. The barrier shattered, and Asmund took a direct hit, leaving his body covered in deep wounds. Hugh glared at the old geezer, demanding that he return the stolen magic talent to his master. Asmund laughed like a lunatic, cackling that once a talent is forcibly extracted, there is no way to return it even if he wanted to. Besides, their fight was far from over, so why the rush? With that, he crushed the glass vial containing the hellfire with his bare hand. A purple flame instantly washed over Asmund, erupting from a tiny spark into a raging inferno in a split second. Glancing at the people lying scattered nearby, he channeled a bit of mana to guide the flames toward them to burn them to ashes. Hellfire was an element that did not exist in the standard magical spectrum, and its heat was utterly devastating. In an instant, the mages and the corpses of those who had already perished were reduced to dust. Using Hellfire for the very first time, Asmund stared at its power with a mix of shock and pure sadistic delight. The massive flames rapidly spread, sweeping toward Hugh. Sensing the overwhelming threat, Sif transformed, casting a gale barrier to block the onslaught. Since she was a sword spirit and not human, she was not easily affected, but there was no telling how long her defense could hold. "Sif, take Connie and Charlotte and get out of here," Hugh ordered. But with a loyalty so deep, she viewed her master as a parent. Sif flatly refused to leave, because her sole duty was to protect him. With no other choice, Hugh stepped forward, looking as relaxed as if he were just watching a show. He told her to follow orders and take the others away, assuring her that these measly sparks were nothing to him. Sif looked up at her master. "Hey, when a handsome guy speaks, he is always right." She immediately nodded and obeyed. Asmund did not care and let them flee. With his current power, they were nothing more than pesky flies to him. He figured he would finish off Hugh first, then easily hunt down the rest later. But as the saying goes, pride always comes before a fall. The hellfire, the very thing he was so proud of that he thought he was the center of the universe, could not even singe the man standing right in front of him. Even worse, the flames actually gathered in his opponent's hand, dancing softly as if they had finally returned to their rightful master. He stood there frozen for a few seconds, unable to believe what had just unfolded right in front of his eyes. Sure, he could control hellfire, but his power was way too weak compared to a real apostle. Even if he thought until he went bald, he still couldn't fathom what kind of monster this guy was to be this insanely strong. Since he happened to run into an opponent who also controlled hellfire, his only shot at turning the tables now was to steal that power. Having devised a plan, that old fox Asmund immediately activated his God-given ability to steal power. but what he saw instead was the first seal of Yu's power. The truth about Yu's identity immediately became his worst nightmare. He had spent all this time running around to avoid the apostles, only to end up running straight into a real one. What terrible luck. Yu dropped his act and stared coldly at the man. A moment later, he said, "If you want my power so badly, fine, I'll give it to you. First seal, release. Surprise, old man. That's what you get for being a copycat thief." He summoned a limited edition version of his hellfire just to show him. After all, the hellfire of the infinite apostle is no ordinary flame. The flames washed over him, raging violently. Yet strangely, they didn't cause his body any physical pain. Within moments, the old man Asman had completely vanished from the face of the earth. Who Yu really is remains a mystery to this day. Only heaven, earth, and the viewers know his true self. With that, everything here was finally settled. As he was about to leave, he happened to catch sight of the poor Qilin lying on the bank. Feeling sympathetic, Yu walked over and broke all the ice pillars, pinning the poor beast down. Then, holding up the artifact rumored to be the treasure gem, he asked, "During the fight earlier, did you hold back your true power because you were afraid of hurting your baby?" With that, he gently returned the egg to the mother Qilin. However, the magical beast was gravely wounded. Knowing she didn't have much time left, she used her head to push the egg back toward him. Though she couldn't speak, he understood exactly what she meant. Yu gently stroked the mother Qilin, reassuring her that because the eggshell carried an apostle's aura, he would personally look after it and keep it safe from now on. Understanding his words, the mother Qilin let out a soft, relieved whimper. She then closed her eyes, took her final breath, and peacefully passed away. Yu stood up and slowly walked toward the cave entrance, leaving behind the shattered cliffs. Erupting lava slowly engulfed everything in a sea of fiery red. Outside, Shin had been waiting anxiously, so she was absolutely thrilled to see her master walk out safe and sound. Knowing they couldn't linger there with Charlotte still unconscious, Yu told Shin they needed to get out of there immediately. He then bent down and lifted Charlotte into his arms. On the way, Shin suddenly mentioned that she could no longer feel any mana coming from Charlotte. Even her life force was fading fast. Sensing the extreme urgency, Yu rushed them to the nearest rest stop to tend to her injuries. Luckily, they managed to stabilize her there. However, they hit a major roadblock. While Yu's magic had healed her external wounds, her internal injuries were completely out of reach. Her mana was totally depleted, and her life force was draining by the minute. If this kept up, he was terrified his master was going to kick the bucket. Suddenly, Shin spoke up, breaking the gloomy silence. "Master, don't you still have the mana that Charlotte transferred to you earlier?" She remembered reading in some book she had scavenged that since Charlotte was unconscious, they couldn't transfer mana through the usual magic crest. So, the absolute best way to do it now was through direct, physical lip contact, creating a bridge to funnel the mana from one person to the other. Hearing this, Yu quickly shushed her. Shin was casually blabbing about it, but he was losing his mind. He'd been single for ages. These untouched lips of his had only ever been used for eating. He'd never even kissed a girl on the cheek, and now he was supposed to go straight for a kiss on the lips? How was he supposed to survive that? Shin rolled her eyes, her face dripping with pure judgment. But right now, restoring Charlotte's mana was all that mattered. If he didn't act fast, her body would regress to that of an ordinary human. Once that happened, no amount of magic would ever be able to save her. Yu took a deep breath and tried to mentally prepare himself. He knew what had to be done. Shin was right. Her life might not be in danger, but if a powerful mage like her got reduced to an ordinary human, she'd probably lose her mind. Shin gave her master a cute little smile and quietly slipped out of the room. Now, it was just the two of them. He helped Charlotte sit up, blocked out all his hesitation, and leaned in to transfer the mana back to her. Time passed in peaceful silence until Charlotte, after a long and deep slumber, finally began to stir. As she opened her eyes, the very first thing she saw was Yu's extremely familiar face. No one knows what happened next, but outside, Shin suddenly heard her master let out a blood-curdling scream. She rushed to push the door open, only to find Yu groveling on the floor, clutching his head in pain. And sitting up on the bed, holding her fist high with a fiery glare, was none other than the short-tempered Charlotte. Sitting on the bed to rest, Charlotte got straight to the point and asked what happened after she blacked out. When Yu asked what happened next, he was treated to a 2,000-word speech full of complete BS. Yu said that after he escaped the black vortex, he saw Asman fighting an injured, platinum-haired mage. The old man was totally outmatched and cornered. To make matters worse, the cliff collapsed, sending him plunging straight into a pit of molten lava where he met his end. Ignoring them, Yu timed it perfectly and dragged her and Sinf out of there. By the time the volcano erupted and the cave entrance collapsed, no one else had made it out. Hearing Yu's recap, Charlotte nodded along, though she couldn't help but feel their deaths were incredibly pathetic. Oh well, and all his careful planning, only to die halfway through because his time was up. It is in the past now, so it is best to just let it go. Seeing that her complexion looked a bit better, Yu asked how her body was recovering. Charlotte went quiet. Although she had received a good amount of mana, it was a far cry from her original strength. She couldn't even cast a basic spell right now, so how was she supposed to fight any monsters? After a moment of silence, Charlotte finally spoke. You should take Sinf and leave. He didn't understand. His expression instantly stiffened, and he quickly asked her why. Charlotte explained that very soon, the other families would find out that Aesmin and Wanda Capella were dead. One was the leading mage of the Flemish Empire, while the other was the Capella family, who controlled the empire's economy and internal potion production. Things were going to change very quickly. Right now, her mana was weaker than an intermediate mage's. If he stayed with her, he would definitely be in danger. She tried her absolute best to convince him, but he flatly refused. Frustrated, Charlotte told him to use his brain. With Aesmin gone, the Powerline family was still salty about the Blue Sinf incident and wouldn't just let them off the hook. Plus, the Isis family had been secretly watching them for a long time. With enemies everywhere they look, even breathing is going to feel like a struggle. He knew that, but he did not care. Things were tricky right now, so if they couldn't run away together, they might as well face it together. What was there to be scared of? Besides, as her disciple and fiancé, there was no way he could just abandon her and run away alone. Sinf also nodded in agreement. He was her master, and wherever the master went, Sinf followed. She was fully committed to staying and helping Charlotte. Charlotte was touched by their words, but she still put on a tough act, warning them that if things went south, she wouldn't save their skins. Yu nodded with satisfaction, then pulled out the Qilin egg, explaining that it wasn't actually a magic gem like the rumors claimed. The Qilin risked its life to protect it simply because this was its baby. Suddenly, Sinf chimed in to ask, "Master, did you give it a name yet?" Hearing Sinf, Yu realized that up until now, he had only ever called the thing in his hand an egg. Since they were all free at the moment, the first ever naming ceremony officially began. "Let's call it Iron Egg." As soon as Yu said that, the egg gave him a massive thumbs down. Even though the little guy hadn't hatched yet, it was full of personality. It literally burst into flames as a way to reject the name. Getting burned, Yu cried out in pain and quickly tried to come up with a much cooler name. But to the egg, Erzuzi still sounded incredibly tacky, so it blasted him with even more fire. In the dead of night, a battered and disheveled Hastan dragged his miserable self back home. When the fight broke out, he luckily managed to use his void domain to teleport away, avoiding the exact same fate as Aesmin. Wanda Capella was unlucky enough to lose his life. And while Hastan had lost a major business partner, at least he could sell the info to the newspapers to make a quick buck. Earlier this year, a fortune teller told him that he was destined for wealth and bound to hit the jackpot. A week later, news of Wanda Capella's death at the Larada volcano flooded the front pages. Charlotte knew exactly who sold the story to the press. It had to be Hastan. She wasn't sure why he kept Aesmin's death a secret, but hey, it worked out in their favor. For the time being, they were still safe and had not attracted the attention of the other families. Putting the newspaper down, Charlotte warned Sinf, who was sitting next to her, to keep a close eye on their unhatched little friend, Xiaoyan. To the rest of the world, it was still a priceless magic gem, so it was best to keep it out of sight. Suddenly realizing that Yu had been MIA all morning, she turned to Sinf and asked where her master was. That was how she found out he had gone out to look around and pick up some ingredients to make potions. While the two of them were convinced he was out doing important work, oh boy, our tough guy was actually wandering the streets, checking out girls to treat his eyes. So much for his cool image. Now he's right back to his usual, girl-crazy self. Standing in the middle of the crowded streets, surrounded by all these exotic beauties, there are gorgeous girls and pretty ladies absolutely everywhere. His spirits are soaring as if he's wandering through a spring garden, studying while having this much fun. Now this is what living is all about. Right as he's enjoying himself, his eyes happen to land on a young man walking out of a pharmacy. Oh shoot, he almost forgot. Realizing he actually has important business to attend to, he quickly turns around and scurries inside the shop. A tiny bell chimes, signaling someone's entrance. He is greeted by the customer service smile of a beautiful female shopkeeper who warmly welcomes him and asks what he's looking to buy. They have a colorful variety of everything, but stock is always low, so buying in bulk is out of the question. Hu's head spins a little hearing that. He mentions he wants to buy some herbs to brew medicine, but notes they might be a bit hard to find. She laughs it off and boldly claims her shop is #1 in the entire empire when it comes to inventory, so there's no way they won't have what he needs. Talk about overhyping herself. Because the second she looks at the ingredients written on his paper, her face goes completely pale. She stammers, saying that while these things do technically exist in this world, her shop definitely doesn't have them. They are incredibly rare, you couldn't even buy them with 1,000 gold coins. Seriously, dude, walking into a local veggie stand and asking for 1,000-year-old ginseng is a quick way to get slapped upside the head. How on earth is she supposed to sell you that? With no other choice, the shopkeeper forces a strained smile, bows, and admits they don't have the ingredients he's looking for. At first, Hu thought he'd easily buy everything he needed and use his free time to flirt with girls. Who would have thought that things he considered common weeds back home would be so incredibly rare in this world? While he stands there silently pondering where to search next, the girl's eyes suddenly light up. Her eyes are locked onto his spatial ring, which is embedded with a high-grade magic stone. With such high-quality gear, its owner must be filthy rich, there's no doubt about it. She quickly catches up to him and suggests checking out the annual black market auction. They sell all kinds of things there, from top-tier weapons and elven slaves to rare herbs and magical powders. Putting her marketing tricks to use, she immediately pulls out an entry ticket and sells it to him for 100 gold coins. Even though his wallet took a hit, he managed to get some crucial information. The auction will be held tonight at 7 p.m. in the basement of the Dragon Knight Tavern. Hu got ripped off big time without even realizing it. The second he turns his back to leave, the smile instantly vanishes from the girl's face. With her wavy brown hair cascading over her shoulders, her role as the friendly shopkeeper is officially over. Only then does the actual owner of the shop sheepishly step out, hesitantly whispering, "Lady Linda, what brings you here? I swear I've already paid this month's protection fee in full." She gives a gentle smile before turning her nose up with the smug look of a winner. A moment later, she answers the shop owner, "What else would I be here for?" "To catch a big fish, of course. And speaking of big fish, she just reeled one in. And who knows? She might even catch a whole school of them in the future." As dusk begins to fall, Hu is still wandering around, searching for the Dragon Knight Tavern she mentioned. Suddenly, a sharp pain shoots through his shoulder. He just bumped into a rather strange person wearing a black cloak, though it was purely an accident. Yet for some reason, even after he apologized, the guards accompanying that person aggressively lunged forward, looking for a fight. Luckily, their master is reasonable. She signals them to stand down, warns him to watch where he's going next time, and walks away with her crew. Hu just stands there, watching their retreating figures until they disappear. Afterward, he brushes the whole incident off and continues his search for the Dragon Knight Tavern. He finally reaches his destination. Amidst the bustling crowd flowing in and out, young Hu sits in a corner, sipping some fruit juice to ease his mind. This juice blend is actually pretty delicious. After taking a huge gulp, he decides to order another glass before the auction starts. Just then, the quiet voices of two men nearby catch his attention. They are whispering about a rare item up for sale tonight. According to one of them, it's a sacred artifact from the sect of Ultimate Bliss, and a ton of people have their eyes on it. Several big shots have already arrived early to wait. Over on one side is Hugh, the Destroyer King, and on the other is O, the Thunder Snake, along with various other big names. Hu has no idea who those people are, but judging by the other guy's shocked reaction, it's obvious how incredibly valuable that artifact must be. Shrugging it off, he turns back to enjoy his mind-blowingly delicious juice. As he's savoring it, a girl approaches him without a hint of shyness, deliberately pressing her assets against him as she strikes up a conversation. It turns out she's the same girl who sold him the entry ticket. After introducing herself as Linda, she offers to be his personal guide. Needless to say, he takes the bait hook, line, and sinker. Our girl-crazy protagonist instantly blushes and nods frantically. Hey, she's gorgeous, so she can have whatever she wants. At exactly 7 p.m., the auction finally gets underway, and the entire hall is packed to the brim. Every single seat is taken. Hu asks the girl sitting right next to him how a place running an illegal business can draw such a massive crowd. Aren't they worried about being exposed? Linda chuckles at his rather silly question. Naturally, Any illegal business has powerful backing, and the organizers of this auction belong to the Serpent clan. Around here, the Serpent clan is the most powerful family. No one dares to cross them. Not to mention, most people who come to the night market to buy and sell things are far from innocent, so anyone trying to bust this place had better pick a very lucky day. Just then, right in the center of the stage, all the spotlights focus on a man in a suit. He's the host of today's auction. After a brief, customary greeting, the host begins to unveil the very first item. Inside the glass box the girl is carrying is a demon arm capable of summoning demons or placing curses on others, with a starting bid of 50,000 gold coins. Once the item is displayed, people naturally start bidding. Linda happily offers some advice, telling him that since he rarely gets to attend, he shouldn't hold back his money and miss out on the good stuff. To her surprise, he dismisses a hairpin dug up from a 1,000-year-old ancient tomb as bad luck. A precious ring, a relic of Huyen Kong City, is rejected for some bizarre reason, as the guy next to her ignores one item after another. Linda loses interest and stops pitching to him altogether. From this moment on, a different plan begins to brew in her mind. If he doesn't buy a single thing by the end of it, she will just steal that expensive ring of his for herself. After all the excitement, a suspenseful hush falls over the crowd, as the item everyone has been waiting for is finally brought out. The cover is slowly pulled back, revealing two treasures: the Frost Jade Bracelet and the Fan Sin Lotus. With a starting price of a whopping 2 million gold coins, Destroyer King Hu is the first to stand up, bidding 3 million. Right after, other hands shoot up, quickly driving the price higher and higher. Just as Linda starts thinking she misjudged him, and that Hu is just an ordinary guy, with nothing to his name but a fancy ring, Hu suddenly stands up. He calmly names an astronomical price, leaving the entire audience in dead silence. 10 million? That is right, 10 million. The moment the words leave his mouth, whispers erupt all around the room. Sweat breaks out on the host's face as he gets ready to strike his gavel, but suddenly, a voice from the other side raises the bid. 13 million. It is a price that makes more than a few hearts race and knees shake, showing just how ready this bidder is to splash that kind of cash. Hu recognizes this guy as a guard he ran into earlier, which means the girl in the black cloak is here as well. So it looks like they joined the auction for those two items as well. However, with over half of the Capella family fortune in his possession, he is basically a hidden tycoon here, so this round is a guaranteed win for him. Hu locks in his bid for the two items at 3 times the price, offering the S-Class Void Ring on his finger, which is embedded with max-level magic. Hearing this, everyone's face instantly turns pale. Flexing this hard, he might as well play by himself, because no one can keep up with that. The guard turns to his master to ask if they should keep bidding, only to be told that it is not necessary. From what she can see, his goal here is the same as hers. Besides, if he can bid such a massive amount so casually, his pockets must still be incredibly deep. For now, they should just lay low, wait for the right moment, and then make their move. With no one left to outbid him, the items naturally find their owner. The host tells him to come backstage later to complete the paperwork and claim his items. Sitting in the audience, Linda is just as thrilled. She wants to take this opportunity to tag along as his guide, planning to pull a fast one and steal the items. But to her shock, Hu is so eager to leave that he marches straight down to the host. In a panic, she tries to stop him, but unfortunately, it is already too late. This is his first time here, so he has no clue about the unspoken rules. During an auction, once a buyer steps onto the stage without permission, it is considered a violation. Not only does the buyer still have to pay the full price for the item, but anyone in the auction hall is also free to step up and steal it. Seeing their chance, a mob immediately seizes the moment and rushes forward. Destroyer King Hu quickly fires off a barrage of fireballs to isolate the treasures, successfully reaching them. One of the thieves is absolutely ecstatic, thinking the treasures are finally his, when out of nowhere, the room temperature plummets below 0, and the ground freezes over. In the blink of an eye, his entire body is frozen solid like a stone statue. The other thieves meet the exact same fate. Wherever the girl in the black cloak walks, a freezing chill spreads, turning everything to ice. After freezing everyone who dared to compete with her for the treasures, she finally pulls back her hood, revealing a stunningly beautiful face with a cold, mesmerizing aura. Her name is Marina Isis, the daughter of General Isis, and also one of the Empire's trump card mages, known to the world as the Duchess of Ice and Snow. Marina boldly struts over, and opens the glass display case, ready to snatch the loot. But out of nowhere, someone grabs her wrist. It is you. He straight up tells her that touching other people's property without permission is a big no-no. What? Did she expect a free lunch? Who does she think she is, acting so shameless? Stunned for a second, Marina quickly snatches her hand back. By now, Yu has already swiped the items and casually informs the auction host that he is taking them with him. Marina had been waiting in ambush for ages, dying for a chance to grab the Frost Jade ring to boost her magic. But now, this guy just snatched it right from under her nose. Furious and unwilling to back down, she immediately unleashes her magic, casting her ultimate spell. Ice Prison. True to its name, the temperature instantly plummets, plunging the entire hall into a bone-chilling freeze. Sensing danger, the black market auction crowd immediately scrambles, desperately trying to find an exit. The goons from the Destruction King's gang, along with Yu, also try to slip out with the crowd. But their path is already blocked by a massive, thick wall of ice. Marina is using her magic to trap everyone inside her icy prison. She struts up to Yu and sneers, telling him he will be trapped here for the next hour with absolutely nowhere to run. Annoyed because he is in a rush to get home, and tired of these petty thieves getting in his way, Yu slickly lifts a sword from some random guy's sheath without him even noticing. You really think you can stop him? Well, he is about to tear this pathetic little ice cage to shreds. Seeing Yu holding a cheap iron sword, Diamond Stan scoffs. He slams his fists onto the ground to show off his brute strength, then charges straight at Yu like a madman. Wanting to get home quickly to brew medicine for his master, Yu decides to unlock his first seal, releasing just a tiny fraction of his true power. As Diamond Stan barrels toward him like a wild bull, Yu tightens his grip on the sword and unleashes a single, devastating slash. Talk about absolute annihilation. Anyone foolish enough to stand in the way of the Infinite Apostle is going down. That single strike completely obliterates a massive chunk of the auction hall. Diamond Stan takes the hit head on, and before he can even finish his sentence, he is blasted straight out of the building. Talk about getting written out of the show. Standing calmly amidst the destruction, Yu sighs. Look, I am in a rush. Stop coming at me one by one and just attack me all at once. That line goes so hard that everyone's desire to steal his treasure instantly drops by more than half. But Marina is no coward. She summons a massive magic circle, raining down a barrage of razor-sharp ice spears. But halfway through, they freeze in midair after all. Her goal is to steal his loot, not kill him. She demands, I only want the Samsara Lotus ring. You can keep the rest. Yu just scoffs and says, sorry, but I need both the Frost Jade ring and the Samsara Lotus. As the icy prison around them cracks, Marina's patience completely wears thin. She offers him one last chance to hand over the items, but Yu stubbornly shuts her down. Left with no choice, she waves her hand, and the massive storm of ice spears rains down on him. But Yu does not even flinch. He does not even use his real power, just a basic fire spell he picked up from Kerr is more than enough to vaporize the entire attack. Marina knew that simple attack would not work on him, but that was never the plan. What she really wanted was the smoke screen created by his fire magic. Now, it is time for her second move. Her ice burial spell sweeps across the area, and huge blocks of ice shatter and rain down from above. Yu does not escape in time, or rather, he is just too lazy to move. A colossal glacier crashes directly onto his head. A deafening boom shakes the entire hall as the giant glacier embeds itself into the ground, unleashing a freezing wave of frost. Looking around, the entire auction house is completely ruined, decimated by the relentless barrage of ice. Marina quickly orders her goons to search the frozen wreckage for the rings. Since she did not see the rings earlier, she figures he probably hid them in a pocket dimension, meaning they must have dropped nearby. But suddenly, a voice speaks up from right behind her. She whips around, and through the clearing frost, she sees Yu standing there, completely unharmed. Marina's jaw drops. She cannot believe he actually managed to dodge that. He does not even have a single speck of frost on his clothes. Sensing her utter confusion, Yu casually clarifies, honestly, your chant was so incredibly loud, even a pig could have heard you coming. And let's be real, a glacier that massive? It gives off so much cold air that it is literally impossible to miss. Trying to pull off a sneak attack with such sloppy, loud moves is just embarrassing. Why even bother fighting? Seeing that Marina still refuses to give up, Yu raises his sword and asks if she really wants to keep going. He unleashes a lightning-fast, effortless swing. It looks simple, but it actually carries hundreds of microscopic, hyper-speed slashes that are completely invisible to the naked eye. In an instant, Marina's clothes are shredded to absolute ribbons, leaving her completely exposed for everyone in the room to see. She threw her arms around him, collapsing to her knees in absolute panic. Seeing his master in distress, the guard rushed over to wrap a cloak around her. While Marina was still in shock, Hugh raised his sword and asked the rest of the crowd if anyone else wanted to steal his stuff, telling them to hurry up, or else he was heading home. The vice president and his crew shook their heads like crazy the moment they heard him. They had already experienced his terrifying power firsthand, so they weren't dumb enough to cause any more trouble. Over on Marina's side, her guard asked if she wanted to mobilize the army to hunt him down for revenge, but her response was the same as everyone else who had witnessed him swing his sword. She knew damn well that if he wanted to, he could take her life in a heartbeat, and that there was absolutely 0% chance of winning this fight. So, it was better to face reality and just give up. Hugh walked over to the exit and sliced right through the ice, blocking the way. Now that the path was wide open, he told everyone they were free to go. Then, he turned to his friend Linda and asked her to return the sword for him. Before leaving, he casually mentioned that she'd look even cuter with her hair tied up, and then they said their goodbyes. Linda stood there, blushing like crazy, staring at his back until he completely disappeared from sight. Right then, a few curious bystanders couldn't help but come over and ask her about his real identity. The scheming Linda from before instantly did a complete 180. Clutching her burning red face, she declared that a guy who is so handsome on the outside, filthy rich on the inside, and absolutely overpowered has got to be her future husband. There was no way around it. In this life, the next life, and even the life after that, she would marry no one else. This was a done deal, locked in stone. He couldn't run from her even if he tried. Meanwhile, poor Hugh was sneezing non-stop as he walked, completely clueless that his casual flirting had just landed him a wife. With his home almost in sight, he suddenly heard a commotion nearby. A group of hulking, muscular men was actually ganging up on a defenseless girl. Unable to just stand by, he marched right over and snatched the whip straight out of the thug's hand. Instantly, the other guys brandished their clubs and demanded to know who he was, talking tough and warning him not to stick his nose where it didn't belong, unless he wanted to get beaten to a pulp. Oh, how terrifying. Guess it's time to teach one of them a lesson. Hugh gave the whip a hard yank, sending the unlucky bastard flying through the air like a dry leaf in a storm. The guy slammed hard against the brick wall and was knocked out cold. Hugh then casually asked them what they had just said, joking that the wind was too loud for him to hear. With someone this monstrously strong, how could they even think of fighting back? You already took down our buddy, so please stay away from us. Knowing they stood no chance, the lackeys didn't answer him. They whispered among themselves for 4 or 5 seconds. Then, terrified of staying any longer, scrambled away in panic. Now, only the two of them were left in the empty alley. Hugh knelt down in front of the girl to check on her. But the moment their eyes met, they were both stunned to reunite with an old acquaintance in such an awkward situation. It was already late at night, and with Hugh still not home, Charlotte was getting incredibly worried. Unable to wait any longer, she stood up, ready to head out and search for him. But just as she opened the door, he happened to walk right in. To her surprise, he wasn't alone. Ajin was right there with him. Charlotte quickly ushered them inside. After filling her empty stomach, Ajin finally explained why she had come. According to her, Isa had suddenly announced she was leaving school to go home. But ever since she left, there was no way to get in touch with her. She came here today because she was worried about her friend and wanted to let them know. Plus, she wanted to check on Isa's house to see what on earth was going on. Charlotte asked if Isa had been acting strange before leaving school, and just as expected, she had been incredibly depressed the day she left. Since things were getting complicated, Charlotte and her student had to split up the next morning. Hugh would go with Ajin to check on Isa's house, while Charlotte had to head back to handle the situation regarding Aisman's news. Before parting ways, Hugh handed the potion he had brewed to Charlotte, telling her to keep taking it once she got back to school. Though it wouldn't fully restore her mana instantly, it would definitely speed up her recovery. As Charlotte took the bottle, she noticed Ajin playing with Sin, and she couldn't help but warn him to stay away from anyone connected to the 3 major clans. Ajin's full name was Ajin Isis, sharing her surname with a powerful general from one of the 3 major clans. Charlotte was worried that trouble would find him when he least expected it. Hugh didn't care. He made it clear to his master that Ajin's background didn't matter to him, and even if she belonged to the Isis clan, it wouldn't change the fact that she was his friend. Charlotte nodded in understanding. She didn't disagree, nor did she say another word. The departure time had finally arrived. After exchanging a few parting words, they split up, each going their own way to handle their own business. As the carriage rattled along the bumpy dirt road, Eugene was sprawled out inside, sleeping in the most ridiculous way possible. Yu sat curled up in a corner, staring at her, completely losing interest in his view. For a few brief seconds, he genuinely wanted to take back everything he had just said. He didn't want to claim her as a friend at all. But then he thought about how she had braved such a long, difficult journey, traveling all the way from the academy just to find him. He couldn't help but soften up. In the end, he gently mumbled a wish for the half-asleep girl to have a peaceful sleep. After traveling by carriage for 2 whole days, they finally arrived at their destination. But they never expected to find themselves standing before the dilapidated Lawrence Manor. It was completely abandoned, with weeds growing knee-high, with the tiled walls crumbling and the glass windows covered in a thick, filthy layer of dust. Eugene even thought they had come to the wrong place. Yet, the carriage driver insisted that this was indeed the Lawrence estate. According to him, the family had vanished about 15 years ago. The place had been left abandoned ever since. Yu and Eugene made their way inside. The interior wasn't much better than the outside. 15 years of neglect had left the brick walls cracked and stained. The entire tower was empty, with garbage strewn all over the floor. Suddenly, something dropped heavily from above, giving Eugene quite a scare. When she went over and pulled off the dusty blanket, she discovered it was a portrait of Elsa's parents. Yu wasn't sure if the family had actually left, but they would be staying here temporarily for the next few days. They wanted to investigate and find out what had actually happened to the Lawrence Manor to leave it so completely abandoned. Suddenly, as if remembering something, Eugene mentioned that before Elsa left, she had asked her to give him something. To talk more comfortably, the two of them headed to a tavern, taking the chance to rest and see what Elsa had sent. Opening the wooden box, they found a spatial ring inside, which contained someone's crest design. In the past, Eugene had gone to the guild to gather some information, but almost no one had ever seen the crest on the ring before. Well, isn't that the crest engraved by that count? Suddenly, the tavern owner spoke up, breaking the quiet atmosphere. She thought for a moment, then explained that the owner of this ring was Count Theodore, who was quite the handsome and dashing man back in the day. She had seen it a few times while she was taking care of Lilith's sick husband. Lilith was the mistress of Lawrence Manor. However, the landlady suspected that she didn't just vanish. Instead, she believed Lilith had taken her child and run off with the Count. Of course, a widowed woman raising a child on her own is never easy. Finding someone else to lean on was probably the smartest decision she could make. Catching on to this clue, Yu asked where the Count lived and learned that he was residing in the southeast. He was in the southeastern part of the Nanya Empire, but she warned him that the empire was currently far from safe. Rumors were spreading that demons were running rampant all over the empire. With that, the tavern owner stopped talking and went back to her work. Eugene then turned to Yu, asking him to teach her combat aura. It was the first time Yu had ever heard of it, and he just stared blankly. He asked her what combat aura was, forcing Eugene to explain that it was a type of elemental magic power. Depending on one's innate talent, this elemental power, combined with a bit of non-attribute magic power, can unleash immense destructive force when merged. Recalling how he had defeated Kyle, she looked at him with a hint of wariness, assuming he had used combat aura rather than his raw physical strength. Don't tell me you have absolutely no idea what elemental magic is. Yu scratched his head with a fake laugh, stammering that he was only testing her knowledge, before quickly changing the subject to avoid giving himself away. Meanwhile, back at the Royal Academy, Charlotte Keir had spent hours tearing Aesmond's room apart, but she couldn't find a single item related to the apostles. Even the drawer sealed with a magic barrier showed signs of being pried open. She absolutely could not let the news of Aesmond's death leak out. Otherwise, the Empire would face an even greater danger. The closest threat was the upcoming 5 Academies tournament. She felt a pang of worry, wondering if Yu and Eugene would make it back in time to participate. In the blink of an eye, 2 weeks had already passed. As Yu's carriage arrived in the heart of Nanya, they witnessed a gloomy atmosphere, with every house shuttered tight. The locals wandered the streets, looking completely exhausted and worn out. Seeing this, Eugene anxiously asked if they had taken a wrong turn somewhere. Yu shook his head, confident that the driver couldn't have lost his way. Still, seeing that even the local grocery stores were closed, things did feel incredibly bizarre. Just then, a bustling crowd ahead caught their attention. They immediately stopped the carriage and got off to investigate, only to find out that this was actually the local guild. Adventurer Eugene rushed over, eager to ask about Count Theodore, and as it turned out, she had actually come to the right place. The girl gave a friendly smile and confirmed that Count Theodore was indeed there, but first, she wanted to know what they needed him for. Eugene was just about to say they wanted to ask about Aisha, but before she could get the words out, Hu covered her mouth and dragged her into a corner. He whispered to her, if Aisha's mother had really remarried the Count, everyone living near Lawrence Manor should have known about it. Instead, they all think she just went missing. This means she clearly wanted to keep the whole thing a secret from outsiders. With that sorted out, he turned back to the girl at the reception desk and lied that they had accidentally found the Count's ring on the road. He claimed they were just trying to return it and hoping to pocket a little reward money in the process. The girl nodded understandingly and explained that the Count was currently in the outskirts. To get there, they would have to cross the vast Nonya forest. However, she warned them that some strange things had been happening there, starting about 6 months ago. Monsters had been appearing in massive numbers, and rumors quickly spread that the demon clan was behind it. Just recently, they finally confirmed actual traces of their presence. Even though this was Count Theodore's territory, he hadn't done a single thing to address the threat. The bounty and the quest to eliminate the demons were actually put together by the Adventurers Guild itself. She then added that if they could take down just one demon, they would walk away with a cool 5 million gold coins. Well, talk about a golden opportunity. The opportunistic young man immediately started plotting to solve the demon issue for his potential future father-in-law. If things went well, he could pocket the massive reward and score a chance to marry Aisha. Still, Eugene couldn't help but feel skeptical. As far as she knew, the demon race had gone extinct ages ago, so how could they suddenly show up here? The receptionist didn't have an answer either. She mentioned that the guild had sent a hunting party of 100 people earlier that day, but not a single soul had returned yet. This triggered a memory for Hu. A long time ago, humans and demons actually coexisted in peace, but eventually, a conflict broke out, sparking a massive war. The 10th apostle, Uman, fought for humanity, while the 12th apostle, Casparis, sided with the demons. Once close friends, they now stood on opposing sides, leading to the very first battle between apostles. After the dust settled, both Uman and Casparis vanished without a trace, and the demon race was never seen again. It was a grim realization. That war was so brutal that it left humanity with a deep, paralyzing fear of the apostles. To put it bluntly, they were terrified of a power that completely transcended humanity. Meanwhile, deep within the Nonya forest, lifeless bodies lay scattered across the ground, and the sharp scent of blood hung heavy in the air. The sole survivor of the hunting party was running for his life, his body covered in deep wounds. But in his panic, he tripped over a tree root and crashed hard onto the forest floor. Before he could get up, a pack of beasts swarmed him, completely cutting off any escape routes. He desperately begged for mercy, but his cries fell on deaf ears. A massive clawed hand swung down, cutting his desperate scream short as he collapsed onto the cold ground. Back at the guild, Hu was curious about the hunting party. He asked, "Did you seriously have to send 100 people just because there are too many monsters?" The girl shook her head and clarified, "No, actually, they're all tracking just one target, a demon werewolf." Hu couldn't help but chuckle. Sending 100 men after a single werewolf seemed like a joke to him. Surely, a couple of quick swings of a sword would do the trick, so why make such a massive fuss about it? The receptionist gasped in shock at his attitude. She thought he must be a gold-rank adventurer or higher to talk that big, but it turned out he was just a low-tier bronze rank barking loud. The moment he revealed his actual rank, the entire room erupted in laughter. Taking pity on him, the girl tried to explain that werewolves are incredibly cunning. Not only are they lightning fast, but they can also wield deadly dark magic. Even a gold-rank adventurer would struggle to make it out alive, let alone a rookie bronze rank. Hearing everyone describe how terrifying this demon werewolf was, Eugene instantly got cold feet and begged Hu to take a different route. He just laughed it off, reassuring her with a grin. "Hey, nothing's impossible if you put your mind to it." Since they now knew where the Count was, they needed to move fast before someone else beat them to it. Soon, night fell, and the two found themselves wandering through the dark woods, searching for the beast. As a mere mid-tier mage, Eugene knew she was in over her head, and she kept whiny whispering that they should turn back. The forest was pitch black and overgrown, and she couldn't shake the terrifying feeling of what might be lurking in the shadows. Wandering aimlessly like this is just asking for trouble. Suddenly, a nearby bush rustled loudly. Eugene immediately gripped her axe, raising her guard. She thought a monster was appearing, but it turned out to be just a tiny rabbit with pure white fur. She let out a sigh of relief, realizing she had been scared over nothing. But just as she let her guard down, a real monster showed up. A dark shadow panther lunged out of the thicket. Bearing its razor-sharp fangs, it opened its massive jaws, ready to tear her to pieces. But Hu noticed just in time, delivering a sledgehammer-like kick right into its gut. The panther collapsed instantly from the blow. It was in so much pain it could not even twitch. This was a dark shadow panther, a beast only bred by the demon clan. It was just a decoy. The moment it went down, the rest of the pack slowly emerged from the shadows. And finally, the rumored werewolf made his entrance. Standing over 2 meters tall and covered in thick fur, he growled, "Your skills are not half bad. Why don't not you join us? Once I rule this continent, I might just spare your life, and that woman's." He was offering them a way out, but unfortunately, Hu did not give a damn. He despised their attitude, and their grand plan to conquer humanity was just plain pathetic. Enraged by Hu's sheer arrogance, the werewolf did not waste another second and ordered his pack of dark shadow panthers to attack. Seeing a massive payday right in front of her, Ajin gripped her axe, all her previous fear instantly vanishing. A wave of immense magical power surged from her body, and with a few swift swings of her axe, she could easily slice right through them. Watching his precious beasts drop like flies, the werewolf finally realized he had been completely lured out by these two. They had only been playing weak and hiding their presence, completely unlike the pathetic adventurers he had slaughtered before. He roared in fury. "So you were just putting on a show this whole time to bait me out?" Little did he know, Hu was about to rub salt in the wound, casually replying that he just did it for fun along the way. Taking him down would not just bag a cool 5 million reward, but it would also score him some major points with his future father-in-law. There was no way he was passing up such a sweet deal. Meanwhile, the werewolf's blood was practically boiling. It was bad enough they came to kill him, but treating it like some casual side quest was a massive slap in the face. Then again, most demons were all brawn and no brains. He charged blindly, throwing all defense to the wind, and was immediately countered with a brutal kick to the gut, sending him flying backward as blood coughed from his mouth. Hu turned to Ajin and said, "Leave this guy to me." He still had some questions, so he wanted to handle him personally. As a proud member of the demon clan who had ruthlessly slaughtered countless humans, being made a laughingstock over and over was utterly humiliating. How could he possibly swallow this insult? The werewolf decided to unleash every ounce of his power in one final strike. Dark demonic energy enveloped his entire body as his strength surged exponentially. Hu's expression darkened, and he immediately demanded, "Who taught you the shadow magic of the underworld?" But the werewolf kept his mouth shut, believing that talking would completely ruin his pride. Fueled by the rage he had been holding back this whole time, he lunged at Hu with bared claws. Unfortunately for him, picking a fight with Hu today was his absolute worst mistake. Hu effortlessly dodged every strike, not even letting the beast graze the hem of his clothes. To find out who was pulling the strings, Hu had to get him to talk. But this stubborn blockhead refused to do it the easy way. Hu had zero patience left to play games. He instantly drew his emerald sword and unleashed a devastating slash right at his opponent. The sheer dominance of this strike was overwhelming, sending a brilliant green light exploding through the air. The shockwave was so massive that a huge section of the forest trembled under the force, leaving trees flattened and crashing to the ground. Before his shadow magic could even activate, it was completely blown away, leaving the werewolf kneeling and trembling like a beaten puppy. Hu stood before him, pointing his blade right at the creature's face, and then asked coldly, "Do you want your pride, or do you want your life?" At this point, refusing to surrender meant certain death. He confessed that under the Emperor's leadership, the demon clan was preparing to invade the human world once again. He was just a vanguard sent ahead to scout out the situation. Thinking humans were still weaklings, he planned to conquer this area first and report back to his legion. He never expected to suffer such a humiliating defeat and end up begging on his knees. After their great war with humanity, a certain powerful being had created a pocket dimension to shelter the demon clan. This person was the savior of the entire demon race in their darkest hour, so even if Hu threatened to kill him, he swore he would never reveal their identity. Hearing this, Hu's mind drifted to a certain name, someone who would create a pocket world to protect both demons and humans. This matched the nature of Apostle Uman perfectly. After all, with his supreme wisdom and countless skills, pulling off something like this would not be too difficult for him. However, Hu still could not understand why the demon clan was being released into the human realm to wage war again. While lost in his thoughts, he suddenly sensed that someone nearby had just opened a dimensional gate. That world is likely where the demon race is hiding. For some reason, though, the strange aura leaking out makes it feel as though there is absolutely nothing inside. Hyo approached the werewolf and asked him if notifying the others about the situation meant they had to open the dimensional gate, or if they needed a messenger who could relay news between the two worlds. Is that right? Seeing the demon obediently nod in agreement, he told him to lead the way to that messenger so he could pass a message to their emperor. However, before meeting the messenger, they needed to make a quick trip to Count Theodore's place. Relying on the map, the group followed a narrow trail. Along the way, the werewolf overheard their destination and told him that was exactly where the messenger resided. Ejin looked visibly panicked and suspicious, realizing that if Aisha was indeed there, the ring she gave them might be a cry for help. Hyo agreed with her theory. Teasing her about her short legs, he swept her up into his arms and dashed ahead using his speed. Before long, the tower appeared right before their eyes. Before they could do anything, a blond man stepped out of the building. He said his master knew the two of them would come, so he was specifically instructed to wait here and welcome them. Night fell over the towering cliffside, where massive waves crashed loudly against the silence. The blond man spoke up. "My lord wishes to invite you all inside to meet. This way, please." Hearing this, Ejin whispered, "Hyo, do you think this is a trap set by the messenger?" As she and Hyo followed the man, he replied, "Hard to say, but we were planning to go inside anyway. Let's head in and see what kind of scheme they're pulling." She agreed, "True, let's go then." Upon arrival, the man turned to them and said, "Right this way, please. My lord has been waiting for you." Sensing something, Hyo suddenly whipped his head around. Seeing this, Ejin got a bit startled. "What's wrong, Hyo?" He instantly shifted his posture, holding his head in exhaustion. "Nothing, I just startled myself." As the three of them kept walking, she simply replied, "Seriously? And here I thought it was something important. I smell something strange, but it's so faint I can barely catch it." A long staircase led the two of them to a hidden chamber. On the wall hung a portrait of a handsome young man with long, shoulder-length blonde hair. Reaching the destination, the man spoke. "My lord, the two of them have arrived." A voice echoed as the figure set down a teacup. "Very well, you may leave." The man obeyed with a quick, "Yes, my lord." A woman's figure was then revealed, and she stood up. She greeted them warmly, "Good evening, you two." The identity of this newcomer left both Hyo and Ejin completely stunned. Ejin couldn't help but gasp, "Aisha," but the woman gently corrected her. "No, I am Aisha's mother. You can call me Lilith." Ejin's face finally relaxed a bit. So she actually got remarried instead of going missing? Lilith then walked up to Hyo and asked, "You must be the one who stole my daughter's heart, aren't you?" He didn't pay any attention to her question and simply asked back, "Where is Aisha right now?" Instead of answering, she just laughed out loud and draped her arm over his shoulder. Lilith pressed her body close to Hyo, though she kept talking. "If you want to take my daughter away, I'm afraid that's not going to happen. But if you're looking to have some fun tonight, I can keep you company." Meanwhile, Lilith's hand was secretly casting a spell on the back of Hyo's neck. "I was thinking." But just seconds later, he completely caught her in the act. Hyo grabbed her hand in a tight grip. He said, "You certainly cast a wide net for a succubus." Ejin gasped in shock. "A succubus? Isn't she Aisha's mother? Could she be the messenger?" "I am not the messenger." Lilith wasn't the least bit surprised by his reaction and simply replied, "But I am quite curious. How did you realize I'm a succubus, Hyo?" Hyo explained, "The moment we reached the city gates, you already knew, and you even invited us in. Only someone with massive mana could sense that, and your average mage doesn't have that kind of skill." Lilith immediately defended herself. "Hey, I'll have you know I'm a very powerful mage." He pressed further, "Then how do you explain why your appearance hasn't changed a bit after more than 10 years? Human beings are supposed to age, you know." Hearing this, she pulled her hand out of his grip. He kept going, "And the moment you used your charm magic, it completely confirmed my suspicion." Listening to his reasoning, Lilith replied, "Ah, I see. Fair enough. Yes, I am a succubus, but Aisha is indeed my biological daughter. It's just that I'm a pure-blooded succubus, while my daughter is a half-breed." She playfully praised Hyo with a smile. "As a reward for successfully resisting my charm, my daughter, Aisha, is in the last room on the second floor." Hyo then turned to Ejin and said, "Ejin, let's go." But she declined. "I'll just wait here. Right now, you're the one Aisha wants to see the most." I'm not going to tag along and be a third wheel. Wanting to be absolutely sure, he asked again, Are you sure you want to wait here? Lilith reassured him. Don't worry, I won't do anything to her. The clock on the wall ticked away, and since it was already late, she added, It's getting late. I suggest you go see her quickly. She's about to fall asleep. Even though Hugh had to go, he was still worried about Ajin. He warned him, Be careful, and scream immediately if anything happens. Hearing this, she blushed and quickly shooed Hugh away, saying, Yeah, I get it. Right now, Lilith's face showed a sudden, unexplained sadness. Before he even appeared, Hugh's voice rang out, Isa, are you asleep yet? Going upstairs, he saw the door was slightly open and pushed it open. Since it wasn't locked, he stepped inside only to find a room filled with pink and various girlish items. His face flushed bright red as he admired it in awe. Is this really a girl's room? He suddenly felt a rush of excitement, not knowing what was coming over him. Before he could indulge in his excitement, he noticed something on the desk. It looked like a single rose. He picked it up and thought, Before I left for the magic tournament, I gave Isa this flower. Suddenly, a door nearby opened. Hugh whipped around in surprise, only to see Isa walking out wearing nothing but a bath towel. Blushing furiously, Hugh stammered, Isa! She stepped out slowly and asked Hugh, Why are you here? Completely flustered by this dreamlike situation, he scrambled to make an excuse. Isa, let me explain. I just got here, and I had no idea you were bathing. It's not like I got excited just from entering your room. A soft smile appeared on her face, but a sudden voice startled Asa, making her expression go dark. If our great lord finds out, he will be absolutely furious. Hugh tried his best to explain. Right, I came with Ajin. He's downstairs, so maybe I. But Asa coldly brushed him off, simply saying, Go home, all of you. She continued, This is no place for you to be. Her cold attitude left him utterly stunned. Isa added, I only sent that ring as a keepsake. I never expected you to come all this way because of it. He replied, But you vanished without a trace after leaving school. We were worried sick about you. Isa clenched her fists. Vanished without a trace? She thought bitterly, screaming in her head. Please, just leave. She tried to lie to him. I'm about to marry a powerful lord of high status. Obviously, I won't be hanging around you guys anymore. I'll be living a life of endless wealth and luxury. Though filled with dread about her future, she only wanted him and Ajin to leave immediately before disaster struck. Yet, Hugh's eyes were fixed only on the tears rolling down her cheeks. Hugh gently asked, Then why are you crying? Startled, she thought, Am I crying? She had tried so hard to hold them back. Having exposed her lie, Hugh could only let out a soft sigh. Gently wiping a tear from her cheek, he softly advised, If you want to fool others, you have to fool yourself first. His handsome face was highlighted by his gentle words, Your acting is terrible, my dear Isa. Hearing this, Asa blamed herself. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have let Ajin bring that ring to you. If that lord finds out, you wouldn't have to face danger by coming here. Hearing her mention that person, Hugh pondered, Is this Lord Isa is speaking of the one who stands above the demon emperor and rules the demon race? Isa continued, Hugh, you don't understand how terrifying that lord is. He's the true ruler of the demons. If we're caught, we're as good as dead. Furthermore, her face filled with panic and anxiety as she frantically tried to warn him, Hugh, you have no idea how terrifying he is. He's the true ruler of the demons. If we're discovered, we're dead. Besides, I'm a succubus, and our instinct is to drain human life force. Blushing, she lowered her head, even though we shared an intimate moment. But he didn't care about any of those warnings. He simply smiled gently and said, Whether you're a succubus or a human, in my eyes, Isa is simply Isa. His words made her blush, her heart fluttering. Finally, he made his decision, reaching out to hold her hand. Forget about that lord for now. Isa, do you want to leave this place with me? Isa blushed, hesitating and unable to find her words. Suddenly, a loud sound echoed as the clock struck 12. Downstairs with Ajin, Lilith gave a cold chuckle and said, So it is 12 o'clock already? Her smile made Ajin feel uneasy as he asked, What? The full moon shone brightly outside as darkness enveloped the entire house. Upstairs, Asa spoke up. It is already 12 o'clock. Time really flies. Hugh replied playfully, Time always flies when I'm with the beautiful Isa. She urged him, Turn around. I need to get changed. Hurry. If we linger, Everyone will be in grave danger. He complied. All right, I am turning around. Hearing rustling sounds behind him, he realized she was struggling and asked, Asa, is something wrong? Aisa focused on changing her clothes, only replying, there is no time to explain. Just get ready for a fierce battle. A few seconds later, she called out, I am done changing. Before him stood the stunning Aisa, her long blue hair pairing perfectly with her pure white outfit. Seeing her like that, Yu couldn't help but gasp, so beautiful. But Asa didn't seem to care. She just said, let's go. He quickly grabbed her hand, hesitating. Wait. Yu then slipped a gorgeous sky blue bracelet onto her wrist as he spoke. With a gentle smile and blushing cheeks, he explained, the jade bracelet I got at the auction is really useful for ice magic. At the time, I just knew it would look perfect on you. Accepting the gift, Asa cherished the bracelet, smiling as she said, thank you, Yu, I love it. He added, and besides, a jade bracelet won't wither like that rose. Her cheeks and ears turned bright red as she quickly changed the subject. All right, let's go meet up with Eiji. But when the two of them opened the door, they were startled by a strange space shrouded in mist. Where are we? Realizing something, Asa said, this is my stepfather's labyrinth. Yu thought to himself, instantly getting goosebumps all over his skin. His magical talent is alternate world. Every night at 12 o'clock, he can replace the entire castle with the world he created in his heart. No wonder I couldn't detect any traces of a domain opening, even with the world shifting around us. It's because, from the very beginning, this labyrinth was all ready.